the tape, let's grind. Shut up. The tape. Let's grind. The tape. We do it a little bit different around here.
We ain't gonna play. Shut up and grind the tape.
Let's grind.
We ain't gonna play. Them dogs in your face.
Let's grind.
We ain't gonna play. Shut up and grind the tape.
Let's grind.
We ain't gonna play. Them dogs in your face. Shut up and grind.
Let's grind.
Grind the tape, bro. Grind the tape, bro. Grind the tape.
The tape. Let's grind.
Grind the tape, bro. Grind the tape, bro. Grind the tape, bro. Shut up and grind. Grind the tape, bro. Grind the tape, bro. Grind the tape.
The tape.
Grind the tape, bro. Grind the tape, bro. Grind the tape, bro.
The tape.
UGA game day, boy, we ball out. Pull up, put the whole conference in the doghouse. Leave them 6 feet, see me on the win streak. All-star status, go coach in the bench deep. Offense on 10, how we run it? Your best ain't nothing, we gon' send them boys punting. Black and red, got them dead on arrival. Defense hunkered down for the tie. Hey, you don't want it with the dogs. Film guy on it, you don't want it with my dog. Break it down, play by play, that's the day-to-day. They know we ain't come to play, boy, it's UGA. Kirby Smart, I cannot play the fool. Back to back, we did not come to lose. Back to back, like we got something to prove. Pay your dues, dog nation on the move. What's up?
We do it a little bit different around here.
We ain't gonna play. Shut up and grind the tape.
The tape.
We ain't gonna play. Them dogs in your face.
Let's grind.
We ain't gonna play. Shut up and grind the tape.
Shut up. Let's grind.
We ain't gonna play. Them dogs in your face. Shut up and grind.
Let's grind.
Grind the tape, bro. Grind the tape, bro. Grind the tape.
The
Shut
tape.
up and grind.
Let's grind.
Grind the tape, bro. Grind the tape, bro. Grind the tape, bro. Shut up and grind. Grind the tape, bro. Grind the tape, bro. Grind the tape. Shut up and grind. Grind the tape, bro. Grind the tape, bro. Grind the tape, bro.
Shut up.
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to MBR, or as we like to call it around here, Nothing But Rants, the show where I find topics that I'm oddly passionate about and I pontificate upon them. These are not hot takes, but rather takes that I'm hot about. What's up? You really like that?
Let's shut up and grind some tape.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome in to the Film Guy Network on a fabulous Monday evening. We got a loaded one for you as usual. We got Week 11 reactions coming to you tonight. 'Twas indeed sneak week, boys. We had a little bit of sneakage going on this weekend in college football. Playoff picture getting pretty cloudy. We're going to go ahead and lay out our top 12 playoff teams at the end of tonight's show prior to tomorrow's releasings. Is that a 7:30 in between basketball games playoff rankings releasing tomorrow?
I believe so.
I think so, yeah.
An interesting one coming tomorrow, but we're going to preview that one today as well. And we're going to bring you 3 things that we learned about the college football slate this weekend. But I want to open with this. Guys, you better start getting okay with Imperfect. All right, if you were out here seeking to find out who the overall best college football team is or who the most perfect football team is this year, I don't think this is your year. I looked through every single college football team out there, even the Oregons of the world, and I could poke holes in them, right? There's been stretches of play this year where even Oregon has felt very, very vulnerable, whether it be at the very beginning of the season or a 1-point win over their one of 2 ranked opponent wins. Did you know Oregon only has 2 current ranked wins? They're by a combined 4 points, both of which are at home. I can sit here and poke holes through every single football team. We know Ohio State has looked relatively vulnerable at points this season, have a suspect win over Nebraska at home. Texas has been throttled by Georgia at home. Penn State is still very much so Penn State. And anyone listening to this tonight feels the same exact way they always have about Penn State. Indiana ain't played nobody, Paul. We'll find out about them against Ohio State. Tennessee, you guys lost to Arkansas. BYU I mean, the Big 12 had to save you this weekend. We could sit here and go through everyone, including the two-loss SEC football teams. I'm looking at Bama. I'm looking at Ole Miss. I'm looking at Georgia. And all three of those football teams have had stretches of the year where you could argue, damn, they might be the best college football team available right now. Then they have stretches of the year where they look extremely vulnerable. What I'm trying to lay out to you right now is we have a 12-team playoff coming our way, all right, and it is already here, right? And I think too many people are out here looking for their team to be perfect. And you don't got to be perfect. You just got to survive August through December and then thrive in January. So if you're one of these teams right now that is looking at yourselves going like, ooh, we got a blemish over here. Ooh, we're banged up over here. Ooh, we're just not good enough right now. That's okay. You don't got to be good enough right now. You got to survive right now, and you got to be great come late December and early January. Again, you don't got to be perfect. You just got to be perfect when the time is due. And we're going to talk about it tonight. I think this playoff picture is all about matchups. Do you match up with the team that you drew perfectly? Okay, if it's a bad matchup, you might be going home that weekend, but it is what it is. Welcome in. We got a great one for you. We got Week 11 reactions. Like I told you, it was indeed sneak week. We got playoff pictures that we're going to preview for you guys today, and I'm excited about three things that we learned from this weekend because I think I got the best one. I think I came away learning something that I should have known years ago, but it really hammered home this weekend being out there in Oxford. So excited for that one. But I want to ask you first and foremost to go ahead and hit that thumbs up button. If you haven't already hit that like button on this video, go ahead and do so. And if you haven't already subscribed to this channel, please make sure you do so. And I want to give a quick shout out to our friends over at BetUS. If you're looking for a new book this season, BetUS is indeed your answer. We got best bets coming for you probably tomorrow. I was 2-1 this week on best bets over there on BetUS. I'm going to continue that role this week for you guys. Guys, over on BetUS right now, if you use promo code YouTube150, you can get a 150% deposit match up to $2,000 and 125% deposit match on your next two deposits over there on BetUS. Again, that promo code is YouTube150. Boys, how we doing today?
Doing good. Fresh week. Another week of college football on the slate.
Just chugging along, man. Another week. We've only got 3 left on the season.
I like the jersey, man.
Yeah, it's a
Broke out the Pat Tillman.
Veterans Day, so got to. Appreciate all the troops out there for what
People had work off today?
No, I don't think so.
I didn't think so. You don't get
No,
Veterans Day off?
You don't get Veterans Day off.
Nah, man.
That's a shame.
Yeah, well, at least they recognize it, so shout out.
Let's get into it. Straight into week 11 reactions. Should we start the night with just a collective laugh at Miami?
It's about time that happened.
Right?
I knew for so long that at some point it was going to happen, and I'm just glad that. And honestly, they're still going to win the ACC. They're probably still going to make the playoff, but still.
Someone say they won it Saturday night. No, I think they walked through the rest of their slate. I think, honestly, for me, this, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but I think this kind of knocks off this idea that they're going to be 2 teams from the ACC because my Nostradamus hat is already on, and I can already see what's going to happen to the ACC. This is Miami rolling through the rest of their regular season slate, seeing SMU in the ACC championship game and blowing their doors off. And then that's a 2-loss SMU team, a 1-loss Miami team, ACC. Thank you for your 1 participant. We'll welcome Miami, but the rest can go home.
Yeah, I mean, I said as soon as Clemson lost 2 weeks ago that I feel like that basically opened the door wide open for Miami to go into the college football playoff. Even if they took a loss at some point down the stretch, that whoever they were in, that means they were going to match up against SMU in the ACC championship. And as good as SMU has been playing and as good as their offense has looked, I just don't know if they've got the firepower to compete against a Miami team like that. So I felt like Clemson's defense was the only one in that conference that was going to truly, truly challenge them and maybe knock them out of the playoff picture. But now it seems like that it's still open for them.
Yeah, I mean, at this rate, it becomes, is SMU going to surprise them in the ACC championship? And if not, Miami is the one and only team from the ACC that gets in. And honestly, we kind of expect that. The way the ACC looked this year, it hasn't been great at all. I mean, Florida State's been a massive disappointment, like a historical disappointment.
People were putting a lot of eggs in that NC State basket.
Virginia
that
Tech.
flamed really quickly. Kyron Jones at Virginia Tech. My God, that went downhill really quickly as well.
Yeah.
They seem to be a tough out right now, but they're still a 500 ACC team. Pitt wet down their leg this weekend against Virginia. The ACC as a whole, I'm with you. It's whoever wins. You got to win out, right? Even if SMU beats Miami, I mean, obviously you're a conference champion. We're going to accept you anyways. But I don't think there's a second team that gets in there.
Well, if SMU beats Miami, they'll be the second team.
No, if SMU beats Miami, SMU's going. I think Miami goes home.
That's
You
a
think
tough.
so?
That's a tough 2-loss team to put in.
Yeah.
Like considering that one of your biggest challenges of the season being in the ACC championship game, you dropped that one to SMU, and then you struggled along the entire season. You limped through it at points, and then Georgia Tech finally got you on the road. You're competing that with a lot of 10-2 SEC teams. That's tough to put up. And like people, there's multiple teams in the Big Ten, teams that potentially won't be in the conference championship that could be in the discussion of we might put them in. Who are we putting them up against? Like that's a tough team to put in.
But I mean, I thought the consensus was that you're not going to get punished for playing in the SEC or in your conference championships. I mean, if Miami goes in and loses, that can't be the reason they're kept out, right?
The second loss could be.
But the second loss is in your. That's
I think it's different.
We got a whole lot of snags, potential snags coming our way.
yeah.
with
There's
this.
chaos coming down the track. I don't
No
know what
doubt.
it's going to come in.
No
But
matter what, like we're going to do this about a dozen different scenarios tonight, where we're just like, what happens if this happens? Well, we're going to have to let them decide.
I think the telling point of if a loss in the ACC championship game would kick Miami out is where they are ranked this week.
Correct.
Where they're put tomorrow. If they're put at 10 or 9,
Hell, we know the current ranking system doesn't necessarily think all that highly of the ACC right now, based off the fact that Miami, at undefeated at 9-0 last week, was ranked behind one-loss football teams.
yeah.
So we already know that they think this conference is a lesser than conference. On top of the fact that I don't think it should be understated the fact that the Big Ten and the SEC have not a literal, it's a literal and figurative gun on the heads of the college football playoff, basically telling them like, hey, we're the big boys here, and I'm going to let you know we're banded together. That's why they did that before the season, right? They made that alliance known that the Big Ten and the SEC are the big boys, and they should carry weight. And I think that will ultimately play a role in how some of these teams get selected. Let's talk about the actual football game, though, in and of itself. What did you think about the way Georgia Tech went about beating Miami on Saturday?
well, I think that Georgia Tech did the one thing that all the other teams failed to do in the closing moments of that football game. If you had them on the ropes, and everybody, I was watching it up in the press box ahead of the Georgia Ole Miss game, and everybody in the press box was saying the same thing. Miami's about to escape again. Like, Georgia Tech wasn't able to put them away. Miami's got the football now. They're going to drive down the field. They're going to score. They're going to walk away with a win. But Georgia Tech got the stop. They got the final stop of the game. They turned Cam Ward over when he was trying to make the Cam Ward-esque play that he has made dozens of times this year, where he's extending the play, and he's probably going to throw a dart down the field and create an explosive. But Georgia Tech, strip sack, jump on the football. That was the difference in the game. Of Georgia Tech was able to make the play that none of these other teams were able to make down the stretch.
Yeah, I mean, these Georgia Tech offenses are tailor-made to limiting possessions and keeping the talented players off the field. The less time Cam Ward was on the field in that game, the less opportunity Miami had to win it. And when Cam Ward was on, Georgia Tech finally made a play. I mean, we've been saying this all year. If you're going to play with fire, you're eventually going to get burned, especially in a season like this. So Miami just ended up playing a little too long with fire today, or on Saturday.
Here's the thing about them, and I kind of bypassed and said they're going to beat SMU up in that ACC championship game, which I still think is going to happen. But they clearly have a problem getting stops.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any question about that. They closed that second half or first half really well against Georgia Tech. Immediately opened up the second half, gave a 9-play drive, and then to close that football game, give up another one. So like they have problems getting off the field when they need to, and those problems aren't just going to subside when SMU comes to town or whenever the next comparable or capable opponent arrives on the schedule. So they're not out of the woods just yet, obviously. All right, Florida got absolutely boat raced this weekend by Texas. I mean, it's 35-0 at the half, I think it was.
Yeah, it was bad.
Now, you had something on the show notes that was relatively interesting to me because I tend to disagree. You think they regret after this weekend already potentially keeping Billy?
Well, I mean, we knew the 2024 season was going to be what it was going to be, but the optics of it, you just came out and said we're sticking with this guy throughout. Like, he is here until 2025 at the very least. You go out and you get destroyed by a Texas team that is very good, and you didn't have Jaden Rashada or Graham Mertz. There's that. But then you look like
DJ Lagway.
Not
Yeah.
Jaden Rashada.
Yeah, well, you didn't have Jaden Rashada either.
Real Freudian slip.
That's a real
there.
Jalen Kimber movement.
Yeah, I was about to say.
You've
But
been
no.
hanging around me a little bit too much.
Yeah, but no, you didn't have either your two quarterbacks, and I get all that. But then you look across the aisle, and the guy that was supposedly your number one target, Lane Kiffin, just went out and beat Georgia. Like, Florida fans that didn't want Napier there have to kind of feel bad, and then some that were kind of on the fence about this decision, that might have swung them the other way, I think.
The biggest win for you, though, out of saying that you are going to retain Billy Napier and that he is going to be your head coach next season, was exactly what happened the day you announced it of DJ Lagway is backing you. DJ Lagway is fully supporting it, which coincides with, DJ Lagway is going to be a Florida Gator next season. He is going to be our quarterback next year. That was the only win you were hoping really to get out of this, and you had multiple other people supporting that decision as well. So it was more, I think it was more so the win, and why it was a win for Florida to do that is it looks like you might have some type of momentum going into next year. Walking into Texas and playing a game against the Longhorns with a former quarterback from Yale, I don't know that you're ever going to win that battle. I mean, especially with how your season has gone, especially knowing that you had Georgia somewhat on the ropes a week ago, and then you fall short of that. Georgia ends up winning by multiple scores. Following that up by having to go on the road to Texas against a team that they're fighting for a playoff spot. They're doing everything they can to say, look away from the Georgia loss. Don't pay attention to that. Pay attention to what we did in the closing minutes after that. It was going to be a loss for you regardless.
You retained Billy Napier for two reasons. One, DJ Lagway likes him and wants to stay playing for him. Two, I think the AD is tied to the existence of this contract.
Yeah.
Yes.
He is.
So they're going to hold on to that one as long as they literally can. And then at one point, the boosters will come to them and say, both of you are gone. And, or they won't. And what would that take? Like an 8-4 year next year?
They got
8-4. He's rehired to see if they can go 10-2 in a playoff round. DJ's last year.
Or they got to beat someone big. I'm not quite brushed up on what their 2025 schedule is, but I think
the same thing flipped.
Yeah, so I mean they've got to beat a Georgia or someone like that where it's like, okay, this is the program-changing victory that they had. You can't come up close again.
All right, Indiana won ugly. The rest of the Big Ten snooze fest this weekend.
Yeah.
Ohio State handled business against Purdue, as you'd expect. They got a real tough one against the Wildcats this weekend, Northwestern.
Oh, boy.
So Ohio State handled business. Penn State was up 28-0 at the half. With the backup, did we figure out what happened to Drew Aller there? Are they just going with the backup? This is an interesting development. I don't know if you guys noticed. I only noticed because I saw the halftime highlights. I damn sure wasn't watching Penn State this weekend. But they did play the backup from what I saw, so that'll be an interesting development moving forward. His legs seem to be a major role in that football game. So they handled business. Oregon semi-handled business. Semi.
I mean,
dude, they're up 21-10, ball on their own 30 in the third quarter, calling fake punts. That goes a little differently. That's 21-17 football game.
Yeah, but I mean,
third.
that's a major coulda, woulda, shoulda. The way I look at it is like there was never a moment in that game where it was like, ooh.
They were never on the road.
No, and now
they could have been.
They could have been, and it didn't look impressive. But I mean, great teams find them places to win situations where they could be on the rope. So I don't have any qualms about the way Oregon won.
For the Penn State discussion, what it sounds like is he went in there, handled business, and they took him out. Based on what the headlines are. Like it's all number 6, Penn State makes light work of Washington.
Okay.
Drew Aller propels Nittany Lions back to win column.
I wasn't watching it because it was on the Cock.
Yeah.
So raise your hand if you watched the game on Peacock this year.
Well, it wasn't on Peacock, but it was a game that was on air.
I'm a liar. I watched Oregon Boise State on the Cock.
That week 1 juice will get you.
Yeah. That was week 3. Wasn't it?
Oregon
week
Boise State.
Week 2.
Week 2?
That was the week Georgia played Tennessee Tech.
Yes.
So, yeah, I've watched a game on the Cock this year.
Attaboy.
What were our thoughts about Indiana, though?
I mean, this is the type of game that could come back to bite you in the end. We said they did exactly what they couldn't do other than losing the game outright. Like, you had to win this game with some style. You had to say that, yes, there is a line of elite teams in the Big Ten, and we are a part of that line. They didn't really set them apart this game. Michigan's been a dwindling team the entire season in the Big Ten. I know they're the defending national champions, but they are not the same team as last year. They're not a very good football team, and you only beat them by 5 points. So you didn't get any style points on this win in an era, and unfortunately, where you're not a brand that necessarily is going to get that nod of respect that an Ohio State, that an Oregon, that an Alabama, that a Georgia would. You had to have style points, and they didn't get them this Saturday.
They didn't get them because the offense kind of sputtered out. But I'm calling this style points defensively. I know Michigan sucks. I know. Offensively, I know they're terrible. But you still held a Michigan rush offense to 32 attempts for 69 yards.
Nice.
I mean, that's boxing that ass up. and then they throw it 32 times for 137 yards. That's a defensive masterpiece against, again, a really bad Michigan football team. But we are in an era of college football where even the perfect teams seem imperfect, and winning ugly is far better than losing, obviously. 100%. But winning ugly is still, nowadays, I give you credit for it. In a 12-team playoff, we're not fighting for spots 3 through 5. We're fighting for spots 12 through, or 7 through 11 nowadays. I think winning ugly is okay. I don't think you have to win with style points in a Power 4 conference anymore, even if you have the 100th ranked schedule. I know that. I know it's bad.
Even if you're the Indiana Hoosiers, though.
Even if you're the Indiana Hoosiers, because they just beat a blue blood the way blue bloods beat them. They controlled the lines of scrimmage on the defensive side of the football. They had the explosives when they needed to, and they got out of there with a win.
Plus, you don't need style points because the biggest thing is you have to get to Ohio State undefeated. Yeah. And you survived this week and you got to win. But on the flip side, it did kind of show that a Big Ten defense that has NFL caliber players like Oregon or an Ohio State, they can kind of keep this offense to a halt. They can kind of manage this football game against you. And so as an Ohio State fan watching that game unfold, you probably feel better about that matchup now.
Oh, for sure.
And but you also, as Indiana, could also feel comfortable as well, knowing we just held a Michigan offense who is their priority is to establish the run, kind of similar to what Ohio State likes to do. And you held them. I mean, you completely dominated the line of scrimmage. So there's good and bad from both of this, but the most important thing is you remained undefeated, and that's the only thing that you have to do right now. You have to continue that against Ohio State.
All right, we've got some really, really zealous listeners to the show. I want to figure out a way to track this explosive data metric. Like if you win the explosives, do you win the football games? Because Indiana won the explosives in this football game, didn't win anything else. I mean, they didn't even. I think they had like 40 rushing attempts for 25 yards.
They win a turnover battle?
No, I don't think there was a drastic slant. I think both teams had a turnover or none, one or the other. There wasn't like a 3-1 tilt here at all. The difference in this football game was Indiana hit explosive passes when they need to.
I mean, any football game that I've watched this year, that feels like that's been the case.
Dude, every football game I go into where I'm like, I trust this team to be more explosive. That's why I'm picking them. That pick ends up coming out way better than any other analysis point I ever have.
Yeah.
And I hope football's not that simple.
I don't think it is.
Well, it's really difficult to get the explosives.
Well, it's also that, but like, who are you getting the explosives against? Is that data going to translate? Like, I know early in the season we were like, Arizona's a very explosive team with T-Mac. They got boxed by Kansas State that week. So I think that explosives are definitely a great indicator. There's a lot of stats that are good indicators, but I don't think explosives are going to be the end-all, be-all.
I think it's that you're like using Arizona as an example. Your explosiveness can't be hinged off of one player. It can't just be, oh, yeah, throw it to McMillan every time and we'll get an explosive. Because if that's the case, defenses are going to find a way to make sure that doesn't happen. But if you're a team like Ole Miss this last weekend and you're hitting explosives from everywhere, part of the field, throw it down the middle of the field, someone's going to be there, then you're going to have better odds of winning that football game, and you're going to put your defense in a lot of conflict. And the same thing with Alabama and LSU this weekend of Jalen Milroe was explosive through his legs, but they also found other ways to be explosive. LSU couldn't find any type of explosivity on offense.
And I also think explosives are almost guaranteed points nowadays, and I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I'm about to say it. But the damn specialists in this conference are so freaking good. That kid Saturday hit that 53-yard field goal. I'm standing in that end. That bitch cleared the net. It cleared the net on a 53-yard field goal. It was good from 70. My initial thought was Lane put helium in the balls, but it is what it is. Boots everywhere. Everybody's got boots.
Everywhere. Punters, I mean, anybody kicking the football this year,
everybody's locked in.
Is going a mile.
Shut up. Any more thoughts on this?
Nah. I mean,
we want to talk about the BYU game just to play the clip, right?
Yes.
So let's start with that. If you didn't watch the Holy War, shame on you. The whole state of Utah upset with you. Utah, BYU, massive rivalry between these two. I think they've played for the last 140 years, some stat like that. Anyways, big football game. It is a one-score ball game. Utah is down, or BYU is down, I think, 2 points with the ball. 4th and 10, ball on their own 5. Incomplete pass. The BYU, whose name I can't quite remember, almost gets hit. Ball's deflected. Game over. except there's a yellow flag on the field. Utah gets called for holding, automatic first down. BYU, I fall asleep. BYU moves the football down the field, kicks a field goal, wins the game. Now, Utah athletic director, not very happy. This is the first time I've ever seen anything like this. Walked into the press conference room and made it about himself and took quite a fine because of it. Play the sound, Jonathan.
This game was absolutely stolen from us. We were excited about being in Big 12, but tonight I am not. We won this game. Someone else stole it from us. Very disappointed. I will talk to the commissioner. This was not fair to our team. I'm disgusted by the professionalism of the officiating crew tonight. Thank you.
All right, before I talk about the actual quote, I saw photos of Mans in this game. He had a toboggan on, or maybe a beanie. Are you a beanie or a toboggan guy?
Beanie.
I'm a toboggan guy if it's got the little ball on the top. He had a toboggan on. His hair was perfectly laid for having worn a toboggan for hours upon hours. So I just want to go ahead and say that. Secondly, have you ever heard an athletic director come out and say that game was stolen from us directly?
No.
No,
Not an AD.
not in the football realm.
And not in a definitely not in a press conference. Definitely not like immediately after the football game, like give me a spot on the press conference table. I got something to say. Now, has it happened where someone gets like post-game quotes from an AD, like off the record type of deal? Sure, that has definitely happened before. ADs have obviously been very voiceful for their football programs if they feel like their program was done wrong, but never in that type of manner where it was put me in front of a camera. I want people to see this.
I want people to know that we were really happy joining the Big 12, and now we're not. That game was stolen from us, and then hit the referees with the amount of unprofessionalism was ridiculous.
Ooh, yeah.
That was stern.
He was going in. He was trying to get fined.
$40K.
Are you
Mission accomplished.
So are you happy? Are you unhappy about the holding call, or are you unhappy because your team is like 4-5 right now? Like
It's probably both.
Like I would understand. Like I understand that bad calls or what you view as a bad call are very frustrating, especially when they happen in the moment of a football game where it is the deciding factor. Like this drive is either going to continue because of this penalty, or we get the ball back. Game's over. We stole a win from BYU, but you're out of the playoff picture. You're not fighting for anything right now other than bowl eligibility. That's it.
He just fought for a tax write-off. The worst thing about this is it was so clearly a hold.
Yeah.
So clearly a defensive hold. Also, like I said yesterday, get your ass off the field. Like, if you want to be upset about it, you had multiple downs to attempt to get back up off the field, and you didn't. It wasn't like that singular call cost you the game. It changed momentum. It certainly did. It gave them a new sense of life, but good Lord, that's heated.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unnecessary, but
Super necessary what's going on down at Florida State right now. Have you seen the latest news out of Tallahassee?
they're firing everybody.
They getting everybody up out of there. Fired Alex
Fortunate.
Atkins, the OC, fired the DC today, and fired the wide receivers coach. I think we all knew the wide receivers coach was getting shit canned based off what's happened lately down there in just terms of the narrative. We also knew somebody was getting shit canned. I don't think I expected everybody to be walked to the plank, leaving nobody but Norvell left on the ship to be, raided by pirates.
Yeah, I mean, they cleaned house today. I mean,
Quickly.
What other option do you have? This is a horrible football team. Not even horrible. They're underperforming. This team is talented enough to win at least 3 games on this schedule. And they're averaging, 14 points a game? It's probably gone
It's
down.
less than that
since then.
now,
Yeah, they
yeah.
scored 3 against Notre Dame. So, I mean, you have to do something. Like, drastic measures are needed for this type of underperformance.
It makes sense to go ahead and do it now because as soon as Game 12 ends, you're transfer portal hunting. You are hunting for your next year's roster. So, yeah, you better go ahead and get that staff lined up and have your guys in there because you've got to start recruiting for next year's roster as soon as the final game of the year is over with. I mean, that's the reality of that team. Like, you put this season in the rearview mirror 3 weeks ago. I mean, there's nothing to look forward to other than next year. So, yeah, go ahead and get your staff lined up.
I will say this. Alex Atkins was one of the hottest names in the offensive line world ever. Like, so much so that Florida State promoted him just to keep him there. Even though Norvell, when he first got there, I'm pretty sure Norvell was primary play caller with Kenny Dillingham. Remember, Kenny Dillingham was there and then went to Oregon and then became the head coach at Arizona State. So this is the third offensive coordinator in 4
years.
seasons now for Mike Norvell. Obviously, he is an offensive-minded guy. It's his background, so it's alleviated some of the stressors there. Defensive coordinator-wise, I think this is going to be a huge hire for him, obviously. But it's all about whether or not you go and buy the right groceries if this is the way your roster acquisition strategies are. And you bought the wrong quarterback.
Well, for sure, but I think it's deeper than that. Like you would like. Do you honestly think that this Florida State roster is only talented enough to win one football game?
No.
And I think that's probably what's most
that's been concerning since like week 3. This team does not fight for their football coach. That is a very, very big concern. But here's the deal, man. Today's news out of Tallahassee lets us know that the timeline on that buyout is next year.
Yep.
You either make substantive change this next season or you're gone and they will eat your contract. Like there are no more, like I said, there's no more people to walk to the plank for this head football coach.
Nope.
You either turn it around or you're gone.
Yeah.
The bad thing, though, is like it's one thing to have to go into the transfer portal and like, oh, we got to get a wide receiver. We got to get maybe an offensive tackle. We got to go get a linebacker and maybe a defensive lineman, and we'll kind of spread out the rest to just make sure we beef up the roster. You're hunting for everything. You are hunting for literally every single position. Name it in the book, you need it.
With a collective that just saw their money get put to not very good use.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So you not only have to go find those players, you've got to restoke a booster base to go get the money to go get those players.
You got to restoke them in potentially a year where it's going to be the most expensive player acquisition ever.
Acquisition.
Yeah, the future is grim for Florida State, honestly. Like, even if they turn it around next year, what's the ceiling? 8 wins, 7 wins?
I mean, I don't want to get into ceiling talks on 2025 just yet. I don't know what their roster is going to look like. I do think one of the more interesting responses was from their 5-star offensive line. I don't know if he's a consensus 5-star. Do you remember his name?
Solomon
Thomas, maybe?
Yeah.
My man Solomon came out on social media and was like, I can't believe y'all fired my guy. Talking about Alex Atkins, like, y'all done messed up on this one. And obviously everybody freaked out about it. And then about 2 hours later, after that one went viral, he tweeted, hey, it's still about business. So if you want to call and talk about business, go ahead and do that. But hashtag go Noles. So basically say like,
I'll take another bag.
Yeah. There's a price for this. There's a price for this. If you want me, we can talk some business.
You want me? Come get me.
Yeah, if you want me, come talk about that money. I love that. I love that. Go get your bag.
Business aficionado.
Especially if you're him. If you're him, go ahead. Go ahead and get that.
Mm-hmm.
Can't say I blame him. You want me to stick around at Florida State? Yeah, it's going to require that. But also, if you want me somewhere else, it's also going to require some money.
Ooh, Bama put belt to ass. Now, here's the thing about this Bama football game. I've watched Bama football for a long time, but, you know, not with the emotional ties that maybe some of my guys across from me have had. So we're on the way back, Kirby, and we're sitting through traffic, and we're having to deal with my man's T-Mobile service because apparently Verizon just doesn't fuck with the state of Mississippi at all.
Huh.
So I'm useless in terms of being able to watch football games. We got it pulled up on Jonathan's phone. And I can't quite exactly remember what the score was, but it certainly was not out of reach by any stretch of the means. The first big Jalen Milroe play and touchdown, Jonathan's looking at his phone. He goes, oh, I done seen this one before. What did you know? What did you know that I should have been live betting on?
Shoot. As soon as I saw Jalen Milroe being the superhero type player that he can be, when he's making those plays, it's over with. If you are not stopping his best ability, if he's walking it down the field like he was, I mean, it wasn't just Jalen Milroe picks up 8, Jalen Milroe picks up 6, like kind of methodically moving it down the field. He was ripping them. I mean, it was a 32-yard touchdown. It was a 72-yard touchdown, but the first moment I saw a 30-yard run, it's over with. Like that if Alabama is doing that to you, you are not beating them. And that's been the case for a lot of years. Like if Alabama's wide receivers are just walking you down the field, like 40-yarders, 30-yarders, like chunking it, and they're just ripping them off of you. I've seen that story. And I've seen this story with Jalen Milroe multiple times where if he is doing that, it's over. Like you have no shot. And they're going to win the way that they did.
Yeah, Jalen Milroe more than ever this season in particular has been a very Jekyll and Hyde type football player, and it's easy to tell what you're getting in that day. Like within the first 2 drives, you can go, okay, we're gonna have a Jalen Milroe masterclass, or okay, this is just gonna be he's gonna be holding on to the ball very long. He's gonna be looking like he doesn't exactly know what's going on, making a lot of mistakes. It was very obvious that was not going to be the case on Saturday. And by the way, the running quarterback has kind of been the Achilles heel of an LSU defense this season. So when you saw Jalen Milroe ripping off those, I kind of felt the same way that Jay Will did, where it was like, oh, this is going to be very. I didn't say it was over like Jay Will did, but I was very much like, okay, this is going to be a very, very deep hole for LSU to have to dig themselves out, and it's going to take 40, maybe 50 points for them to win this game.
I talked a good bit about Bama yesterday in just terms of like their running style. I thought it was like the same exact play almost every single time that LSU kept misfitting. Bama, like you guys mentioned, Bama, if they're going to run the football like that, they're going to be really, really tough to beat. My question, as it has been seemingly all year, is whether or not he's going to be healthy enough to do that every game, because that's their best style of football. There's no doubt. There's obviously a stretch in there. You can tell it by the way that they're calling plays, where he's either banged up or not 100% healthy, or they're worried about consistently running him. They dropped him back, 52 times in that Tennessee football game. They dropped him back 18 times in this one. Now, obviously, they were winning, so there's a very drastic difference between those two. But if they're able to do this, it's all – first of all, if he's healthy, they're going to do this. I think that's pretty clear with his ability to run the football. My question is, when they get into playoff situations, which they're in the rest of the way, as most of these two-loss SEC teams are, is he going to be able to stay healthy for the next 2 months when we know he's going to have to carry it at least 15 times every game for them to win?
This would be one of the teams where you definitely want to try and get that first-round bye. Like, if you give Jalen Milroe as much time as possible, keep him fresh, and we want him as fresh as possible for the next 3 games that we got to play to fight for a national title. I mean, because it does hinge off of that. It is, Jalen Milroe, can you do it today?
Yeah, I mean, that is going to be the million-dollar question for Alabama moving forward, is what type of Jalen Milroe are you going to get? Are you going to get the healthiest, most locked-in version of him, or are you going to get Jalen Milroe where it's, hey, we kind of need to take care of him, maybe not make him the Jalen Milroe that we see, because that Jalen Milroe isn't going to win you football games. So
I do want to give my other take that I had in this football game.
Oh, yeah, deliver.
So you and I were sitting there watching LSU's offense. I mean, every single time Garrett Nussmeier dropped back, both of us are like holding our breath, like what's about to happen? He's either about to throw a pick or he's about to throw the dot of his life to Kyron Lacey down the field. And I got to thinking about it, and I was like, this is 2020 Stetson Bennett. That is what it's like watching Garrett Nussmeier play football, because one play, he's going to make you, oh my gosh, that's a football player. And he is a gamer. Garrett Nussmeier is a gamer, and that's what Stetson Bennett was. That dude was going to keep ripping it. He was going to be trying making plays that he probably shouldn't be, try and go outside of the lines a good bit, was like, whoa, let's ease back a little bit. And immediately after that play, he's going to throw a duck fart or he's going to throw an interception. It's going to like the worst play of his life. That's what it was like watching Stetson Bennett, where it's like, there's something in him that I really like about him. That's kind of fun to watch. But the other part of me is like, if I'm a fan watching him, I'm holding my breath every single time that dude has the football.
And the craziest thing about both those football players is that their whole life people told them that they're not allowed to do that.
Yeah.
Like, Brayden, but we need you. We literally need you to manage this game. That's what we need you to do. We need you to go out here and make smart decisions. Don't turn the football over. And just mentally, they're just wired. It's like they got this huge chip on their shoulder. Just be out here like, nah, dog, I'm him right now. But yeah, every time, you're right, man. Every time he makes one of those plays, it's like, something bad's about to happen.
Yeah.
Here was my overarching thought about LSU after having let this one sit for about 36 hours. Obviously, the turnover problems with Nussmeier have been a problem this year, and they continue to happen in bunches, which is an even bigger problem. It compounds the issue. But I don't think anybody watching LSU right now thinks they're as good as LSU's supposed to be at defensive back. They're not. They don't have a first-round football player, in my opinion, right now, in the defensive backfield. When is that? It's been like 15 years. They just roll them out. Just every single year they got a guy. It's been 2 or 3 years now where it's been like, hey, who's LSU's best defensive back? I don't know. They didn't make a whole lot of adjustments or additions to the room this offseason in terms of players. They went and got a bunch of new football coaches. They didn't get a bunch of new football players. They didn't go recruit a bunch of elite football players at those positions, right, at defensive back. They've obviously been banged up at running back, but they're not the standard that they're supposed to be in terms of LSU at the running back position. They were early to start the year. That guy got hurt, right? They are certainly not what we've come to expect LSU to be at the wide receiver position. I like Kyron Lacey a lot, but he's a fifth-year guy that's there and has been behind guys that we've become accustomed to from LSU standards, right? The Malik Neighbors of the world, the Brian Thomases of the world. And I know you lose these guys, you're not supposed to just 3D print brand new ones, but LSU always has. It's always seemed like LSU's 3D printed these guys. So they're not as good in some of these other areas where they've been elite for like 15 years. And I don't know who that's on. Maybe it's the state. Maybe the state has not produced these guys at the high capita that they have in years prior. I don't know the full depth of the issue. I'm just pointing it out. It seems like they're not the standard at some of these other spots.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the criticisms we had around Brian Kelly was that it doesn't look quite like an LSU team yet. The inklings of it are there, and there's certain moments where you say, oh, this is still a very talented team. But I mean, even last year, like, it's hard to replace NFL talent, especially at the quarterback position, especially at the wide receiver position. And I just don't think that they have the adequate enough talent to do that right now. And that was what we had coming into the season, where it was, are you going to be able to replace 1,000 yards of rushing offense from your quarterback? Are you going to be able to replace Malik Neighbors? So
it's like, defensively, like, where's the team speed?
Yeah.
Like, I know Jalen Milroe is really, really fast. I know he makes fast people look not fast. But they're bad tackling. They give up explosives in the run game consistently, and they don't run anybody down. It's weird to see from an LSU football team.
And I guess that you just looking at last year's recruiting class and this year's recruiting class, it seems like they are about to get back to the wide receiver standard. Last year they had Kylan Billett, who is a top 70 player in the nation. He was a top 15 player at his position. Then this year you got Derek Meadows, who's another highly rated wide receiver.
Out of Cali.
So, and the Billett kid was out of Louisiana. So it seems like maybe you're kind of getting back to that, but this year's certainly not the case.
And we'll see what Meadows ultimately projects into. That's a 6'5", 215-pounder. That's a big dude.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see what he ultimately kind of turns into positionally. I don't know if he's going to stay outside or if they'll make him a big slot or if they'll make him a tight end. It all depends on how his body grows, obviously. But, yeah, man, I also talked about yesterday, like, they're first-round caliber at tackle, but they aren't, like, first 3-round caliber guard to guard. That's where they're getting beat consistently is on the interior. And that's also part of the reason why they can't run the football. So, yeah. Interesting to see there. I think Bama's one of the hotter teams in college football right now the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, there's no denying that the last 2 weeks for Alabama have been fantastic. I think they've allowed, total of 13 offensive points. They shut out Missouri and had a late touchdown against LSU. Like, that defense has really tightened things up.
Well, Eli did say that their game would be totally different if Brady Cook was healthy. So we have to take him at his word for that.
They're bowl eligible, so it's okay. They'll be all right.
Hey, kept their playoff hope alive.
Colorado finishes off Texas Tech. This is one of those classic late-night college football games that nobody really watched, claimed that they did, looked at the score and was like, oh, Colorado handled business.
No.
This was a tight football game with like 10 minutes left in the fourth. The defense won this one.
Yeah, and credit to Colorado. And I kind of want to give them credit in this because this was the game where I was like, hey, here it is. This is another trap game for Colorado. And they got into kind of a situation where it was, it's looking like Texas Tech might really be able to pull this off and give them issues. And Colorado was able to close out in fashion and making the scoreboard look like a much different game. And no, it was a much closer game than people give it credit for. But in the same token, we also came into this game thinking that, hey, this might be a game where Texas Tech gets them, and it wasn't that.
I picked Colorado because of the passing attack. I thought Texas Tech wasn't going to be able to hold up. I mean, they held them to under 300 yards passing, held Travis Hunter under 100 yards receiving. The problem was the late defensive collapses. I mean, Texas Tech held Colorado to 3 straight 3-and-outs to close this football game. Their offense was just turnover prone. Colorado's defense forced 3 turnovers and a turnover on downs in the second half alone. You're not going to win a football game doing that.
Not usually.
So, yeah, I mean, we always give credit to teams on here when they win styles of football games that we don't necessarily expect them to, right? Finding ways to win is important in college football, and Colorado found a way to win this weekend. And they have a pretty good shot at winning the Big 12. And speaking of hottest teams, like, Colorado is handling business in very various forms of fashion in their Big 12 slate right now. BYU is not.
No.
Colorado is the most confident team in the Big 12 right now, I think you could say.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they got everything going for them.
They were confident at 4-8 last year, but that's a byproduct of the culture. They're walking around with confidence daily. That's their head football coach to proper avail this year, by the way.
But they have every right to right now because they're winning football games. They have 2 things that a lot of football programs don't, which is a first-round caliber quarterback and a Heisman Trophy finalist. And a lot of teams do not have that, and both of them play on the same side of the ball. The other one plays both sides of the ball, and he's playing it really, really well. So they have everything going for them. They're in a conference that they certainly are favored, in my opinion, to win right now, if it is indeed BYU versus Colorado. So everything's lining for them to legitimately be a playoff team.
Any more thoughts, Kirby?
No, I mean, Colorado's looking good this year.
All right, apparently we must talk about what you are claiming as Army's Freedom Drive.
I know what this is.
My God, you don't know a single thing about this.
Nope, I'm completely blind.
Perfect. All right, so
Talk to me as if I'm 3.
let me paint a picture for you. So Army is playing North Texas. We are just into the third quarter.
The Green Wave.
Green-
No, that's Tulane.
Mean Green.
Mean Green.
Army is up 7-3 in this game. They get the ball on their own 6-yard line. Army then proceeds to complete a 21-play,
Love it.
94-yard drive that takes off 13 minutes and 54 seconds off the clock. Army wins 14-3. That is the definition of America right there.
That's triple option FAP right there. There are coaches running the triple option every day, out here all across the country, putting that one up on the whiteboard.
A single quarter of time taken off the clock, though, for a touchdown drive. I mean, that is salute to the
It's your
troops,
worst
man.
nightmare
My
of playing a
God.
team like that.
I wonder how many times they ran belly on that possession.
I don't know.
Well, quarterback midline.
We had that on like the small TV in our living room. It was like, wait, did Army
Did
get
they run any Sally?
No, it was just a lot. I mean, it's a lot of read option stuff that you expect to see from a.
I know. I'm
Army-like
just going
team.
through my read option playbook. I only got a couple more plays left for triple option playbook.
I'm not super.
So I talked belly, midline. Ooh, did they run straight veer?
I don't know.
Had to throw Sally in there.
You're just flexing at this point.
I mean, it's a joke about the offense.
Yeah.
There's 5 plays. It's 5 plays. And they ran them 5 plays to perfection
That's
for
all you
21
need.
snaps. Is it?
I mean, it worked
You
pretty
think
well.
North Texas out here with a bunch of elite team speed
Wasn't
and
elite
big,
enough.
long defensive ends?
Wasn't elite enough.
No.
Hey, look, all I'm
Freedom
saying is
Drive.
Put the troops in the damn playoffs.
Shout out. Speaking of the playoff, let's go ahead and give our playoff picture. Should we go to newly debuted camera angle number 5? I forgot to wipe the whiteboard down. We'll just do that on air. So let's go ahead
fine, let's go.
and roll the cameras over there, and we'll re-debut, second debut of new camera angle here on the Film Guy Network. All right, so last week, this was our ranking. Okay, we had Oregon, Ohio State, Georgia obviously lost, Miami lost, Texas won, so they'll be moving up. Indiana moved, Tennessee's going to be moving, Penn State's going to be moving, BYU's going to be moving, Bama, Notre Dame, discussion point's going to be moving, Boise State not going to be moving, OLI definitely going to be changing. All right, so I left my notes over there, boys. I'm going to have to go back there and get those. And I don't know where the red pin is, but we'll find that in any moment now. Okay, so here we go. We got notes, and looky here, we got red pin. All right, sometimes the ADD brain pays off, I should say. All right, here we go. We're not moving are we moving 1 and 2?
Nah, we're good.
All right, we're not moving 1 and 2. All right, but we are from a ranking standpoint. We're going to put this in the actual rankings of conference champions, okay? So let's go back here. Let's do this and do it in playoff fashion. All right, we're going to put the SEC winner, projected winner right here at number 2. All right, at number 3, we're still sticking with Miami because we believe they're going to win the ACC. All right, we got BYU still projected to win the Big 12. Now, here comes the actual rankings. We put Ohio State at number 5 this week, okay? Now, here's where the discussions come into play. Penn State gets our number 6 bid this week. All right, number 7 this week is Indiana. All right. Number 8 is Tennessee on our rankings. Number 9 is Ole Miss. And this is where we're going to make some people mad. Number 10 is Bama. All right. And number 11 are those lovely Golden Domes that took a poop on their home field to Northern Illinois. All right. So, boys, the outside looking in right now, first and foremost, Georgia.
Yep.
Georgia, you want to get in, beat Tennessee this weekend? We'll talk about you next week. Also on the outside looking in, ACC second team. Okay, right now that's SMU and the Big 12 second team, which right now is Colorado. Guys, I think these two stay on the outside looking in no matter what. That's my personal opinion. I don't know how y'all feel.
The only way it doesn't occur like that is if obviously SMU beats Miami, which we don't think is necessarily going to happen, but seeing after what they did against Georgia Tech, it could.
Even then, I think there is a strong chance that the playoff team or playoff committee looks at Miami and says,
Tough luck.
tough luck. You're
Really?
going home.
So you think they're going to punish them for losing the conference?
I think they're going to hold that comment's feet to the fire. And they didn't say they weren't going to punish teams. They're going to say, we're going to watch the games, right? We're going to watch the games. If Miami's defense shows another vulnerability against SMU, gives up 48 points, and they lose 48-24, Miami's going home.
You can't lose.
No, you can't lose big.
You can't lose big at all. But I mean, if it's a
last
close
score,
game, if it's a Georgia Tech type loss, I don't think Miami's getting kicked out because SMU has been a respected team thus far.
I don't think you feel comfortable.
No, you shouldn't feel comfortable, but I would be. If I'm a Miami fan, I get left out because of that, I'd be outraged.
And we have multiple instances historically of the College Football Playoff Committee just giving a big old middle finger to the ACC. And I'm not saying this is going to happen again. I'm just saying we can't mark it out of the possibilities. All right. What are our other talking points here, guys? This group right here of 6 through kind of 10 are really up for debate in terms of where you rank them, how you see them.
I'm kind of interested why you feel like Ole Miss is above Bama right now.
I mean, these two could be flip-flopped. It doesn't really matter.
Okay.
I mean, if you want to sit at home and flip-flop them, you can. Now, if I were in a committee room, I would go, I like the win of Georgia at home over maybe Bama on the road. But Bama was really, really convincing. So maybe you just talked me into it with a quick little discussion.
Okay. That was kind of my one discussion.
I mean, these two are neck and neck. I think all these two-loss teams in the SEC are going to be staring at one another at the end of the year. And I don't think that's going to bid well for anybody.
No.
So the real discussion, I guess, is are they going to let 3 or 4 SEC teams in? Are they going to let 3 or 4 Big Ten teams in? We're just going to have to see how it plays out.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting to a point now where there's so many two-loss and Big Ten and SEC teams that it's just going to be kind of which team do we rank. But I think that Georgia is definitely in a favorable situation because if you beat Tennessee this weekend, you have 2 wins against top 10 opponents, and your only 2 losses will be also against opponents we presume will be on the top 10, which, by the way, they're both on the road. So, I mean, and they have the number 1 strength of schedule. So, Georgia's looking a lot better than some of these teams. Like, Ole Miss's 2 losses are rough. I know they have the head-to-head against Georgia, but I don't know. And even Tennessee, if you lose to Georgia and Arkansas, like those 2 losses are worse than what Georgia's had.
I think what has happened is, at least in my opinion, where at the beginning of the season and really in the middle of the season, we were saying we don't think that teams are going to be punished for playing in a conference championship. I think all of these 10-2 teams, I think you could see a team that could be punished by playing in a conference championship. Like Ole Miss, I think that they are playing great football. I think they are one of the most dangerous teams in college football right now. If they were to make the SEC championship game and lose to whoever by 13 points or something like that, you have 3 losses now. I don't know if that's an automatic you're staying in. Texas
would be a bad matchup stylistically for them because they do run a lot of outside zone. So a lot of that stunting can be neutralized.
Yeah.
They're built to kind of handle some of those stunts.
Yeah, and I think the same thing can keep being said for Penn State of you have no quality win right now.
0.
You're literally holding on to the fact that you narrowly lost to Ohio State.
Are you at a point now where you're convinced Notre Dame's a playoff team?
I mean,
what else do you do with them?
What do you do with them?
I'm not trying to caper for them or anything, but I mean, at the point we're at now, I mean, there's so many.
You know what it would do? It would force them to realistically have a discussion about joining a conference. Mm-hmm. And I think that's fair. I think that's only fair because I've made the point on this network, and I'll make it again. I don't know which camera I'm in. I'm over here. Yeah. Guys, ain't nobody scheduling Notre Dame out of conference anymore. Why would you? Why would you schedule Notre Dame out of conference? You got to go through your non-divisional schedule nowadays in any of these Power 4 conferences. If you're the Big 12, the ACC, the SEC, or the Big 10, all you got to do is win your conference slate, and then you're into a college football playoff. Why would you schedule one of these non-conference teams? That's tough. You know who's keeping out of the playoff right now? LSU, because they dared to schedule USC out of conference, and they took a loss game 1. Guess who ain't scheduling out of conference games against comparable opponents anymore? Probably LSU's athletic department. Because why would you? What good does it serve you other than, we got a primetime matchup? Buddy, you're going to play 7 of them in the SEC this year. So, what are we talking about? I think it would force Notre Dame's hand in the Jordan Conference, and I think that's good. Because I don't think you should be able to play USC, Florida State, the service academies, and then get to walk into a college football playoff after taking a shit at home against Northern Illinois. That's not fair.
I don't disagree with that.
So there we go. All right. Now, 3 things you learned this weekend in the college football slate, boys. What do you got?
You Go ahead, Kirby.
First one thing I learned is that the margins have never been thinner. I think we've all kind of really gotten that idea as the season's gone on, but it once again reared its ugly head. Georgia and Ole Miss, 3 versus 16. Like, those are two teams that you would say favors the 3. In previous matchups, Georgia always handles teams outside the top 10. That did not look like a top 10 or outside the top 10 talent team. That looked adequate with Georgia. And I don't know if that's either from attrition from Georgia or the fact that Ole Miss got a lot more players on their roster this year. Maybe it's a little bit of both, but the margins are razor thin everywhere you go. 1 and 10 is not that different from 10 to 15 anymore.
Mm-hmm. I was going to give all 3 of mine in a row.
Yeah.
Okay, do you want me to do that?
Yeah, go ahead.
The next one I have is the SEC refs have royally messed up, and it happened in the Georgia-Texas game. Since then, we've had 3 instances this past week alone of fans throwing balls on the field, and we talked about this. You set a precedent when you did that, when you overturned the call, and now you have the entire college football world having to deal with a bunch of shit where fans are throwing things on the field.
I want to say it happened at Ohio State or a Big Ten school last week as well.
It did.
Clemson did it.
Clemson did it last week when they were losing to Louisville. I mean, you had LSU versus
The Canadian
Bama.
fan base did that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they were throwing bottles. LSU versus Bama,
Changed my
Texas
tone
Tech.
on those guys.
Travis Hunter got hit by something this week. Utah versus BYU after the game option. So, I mean, the SEC officiating crew has created a real mess for the entire world of college football. And then, honestly, it's gone unchecked. I know that they kind of got their wrists slapped or whatever, but it's not anything substantial that's going to stop this from happening. So you have a really big mess on your hands right now. And then my third one is the SEC as overall. It's just a mess. I think more than ever, where there's never been a clear-cut, hey, this is the top team in the SEC and this is the second team. Or even when we had divisions, it was this is the best team in this division, this is the best team in that division. There's really nothing right now for me to say that I could pick maybe 4 or 5 teams that I could say might even win the conference title, but it's a big jumbled mess. And hopefully it gets more clear for the sake of the playoff committee. But if you want chaos, hopefully it doesn't.
Go ahead.
Number 1, Oregon has to be feeling fantastic. It feels like they're really the only program remaining right now where you could afford a loss and your playoff hopes don't shift at all. Like, you drop a game, whether it be in the conference championship or, heck, even if it was late in the season to one of these opponents that you have left, if you drop that game, you're still going to be sitting pretty. You're going to be in a good spot. So I think that Oregon has to – the fact that you're doing something that nobody else in college football, even to all the other undefeated teams right now, Oregon is doing it at another level that nobody else is doing. So I think that they have to be feeling really, really good about themselves. South Carolina should be kicking themselves, and rightfully so. You're a bad call away from potentially being a playoff team. You're playing really good football. Some are saying you're the hottest team in college football right now based on how you're playing. But I'll tell you what I've been saying all year about you is you had your opportunities. You had your opportunities to put yourself in this discussion. You lost 3 games. You couldn't seal the job against Alabama. You couldn't do it against LSU. You had your opportunities in front of you. So, yeah, you should be kicking yourself because you were a few plays away from potentially being in this college football playoff discussion. And then number 3, kind of along the lines of what you said, there is zero certainty in the SEC right now. You take the top 6 teams against one another. I think all of those games, all of those opponents, you put them up against one another right now, it could go a lot of different ways. It really has boiled down to, like, which version of Georgia are you getting? Which version of Tennessee are you getting this week? Which version of Alabama are you getting? Like, it's a lot of good football teams, and it has just completely gutted itself now to this point.
Sidetrack. Is there any way that these conferences, do you think, are going to balance some of these strength of schedules? Like, how does Missouri have the schedule that they have, and Georgia's played more road games against top 25 teams than they have home games at this point in the season?
I mean, there's a theory going around Twitter right now that, and I don't believe this, but I mean that Sankey and staffing of the SEC kind of rolled out the red carpet for Texas and made into the sacrifice of other teams. I don't know if I believe that. I think it's just kind of how the schedule shook up.
But it's not just the SEC. The Big Ten's got this going on, too.
Indiana's has it going on for them right now.
Indiana's got a cakewalk schedule with one opponent against Ohio State. Penn State's got the same damn thing.
Mm-hmm.
Oregon has a pretty tough slate, but it's not, like, gruesome. It's just weird. It feels like you either have the world's hardest schedule or a very, very easy schedule.
I mean,
some of these conferences.
Ohio State and Georgia fans should feel the same way right now. I mean, you look at the rest of the conference, you're like, what in the heck? Why were we put through this? Ohio State sitting there like, we had to go to Penn State and we had to go to Oregon, while all these other schools are just kind of walking, like, moping their way through the schedule. And then when it comes to us, it's like, oh, got to get up for our one big game. Georgia's like, man, we had to go to Ole Miss. We had to go to Texas. We had to go to Alabama. I mean, you should be feeling that way because when you look at the conference, it's not stacked up equally whatsoever.
Interesting.
And to be fair to some teams, like these schedules have been fluid throughout the year. Like start of the season or like at the end of 2023 when these schedules were announced, Michigan playing Indiana was a big game for Indiana. Now, it's not Indiana's fault that turned into a cakewalk nowadays. I mean, it's the same for other teams like Georgia having to play Tennessee, Ole Miss, Texas, and Bama. We all had an assumption that those teams would all be pretty tough. It's safe to say that just about every single one of those teams, with the exception of maybe Bama, has either met or exceeded the expectations so far. So, I mean, your schedule in turn gets a lot more difficult. So, it's unfortunate. It's some of it does come up to scheduling, but I think it's also a little bit of certain teams are overachieving that makes your schedule a lot harder.
It's just very, very weird.
Very.
That we have some of these teams that are playing 4 or 5 of these absolute slobber knockers, and then we got other teams that are just got the luck of the draw, and then we double down and say, oh, by the way, if you got the shit into the stick this week or this year, we're just gonna flip the stick over and shit on the other side next year.
Yeah.
Like, it's just so weird. I know this is Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti, and nobody's ever allowed to question any of the decisions they ever make because they're all knowing and all powerful. It was weird. It's very, very weird. And unbalanced, and that's not something that they do typically. All right, 3 things that I learned this weekend. Number 3, we are setting ourselves up for an imperfect champion. We talked about that to start the opening of the show. I don't think there is a 100% perfect football team. I don't think there's going to be one, and we have set ourselves up for the end of the year. Some of these fan bases going, damn, we had a championship caliber football team this year. It just didn't happen for us. Maybe that's good. Maybe that's bad for the sport. I don't necessarily know. But if you're looking for perfection, this isn't going to be your world of college football anymore. Number 2, you better prepare for inconsistencies in the college football takes. I've already seen them. The most notable one this week has been people ranking Alabama over Tennessee despite the fact that Alabama beat Tennessee, and then people responding with, well, that Arkansas loss sure is bad, completely forgetting that Alabama lost to Vanderbilt. So you're going to see this, guys. You're going to see a lot of inconsistencies in these takes. Another one of these, people crapping on Indiana for having a bad schedule, but not turning around and giving BYU credit for having the 27th toughest schedule in college football right now. When you look around in the top 12 rankings, there's a lot of teams with like the 45th best schedule. And then there's Georgia at 1, BYU at 27, Indiana at 100. Everybody else mixed in between. It's BYU and Georgia playing a tough one. Everybody else kind of playing a relatively easy schedule so far up to this point in the season. And the number one thing that I learned, I should have known this. It seems like an obvious correlation. But I have come to the decision, boys, that the required GPA for admittance into a particular university is directly correlated to the hostility of that home field advantage. Notice I didn't say loudness or, crowd environment, whatever. Hostility. If that GPA ain't necessarily through the roof to get up into that place, that could be a hostile environment. All right. Now, look. I was this close to going to Ole Miss, so don't think I'm out here crapping on these folks, all right? Because I was about to be one of them. Had a D2 phone call not been made, we'd have been out there, all right? Because it's about the only place I got accepted. And that's kind of the point. Very hostile environment, boys. I thought they could have stormed the field at any moment. They stormed it twice.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, we'll talk about that on the local hour. But
popping the clutch. That's all that was. Yeah. We got a whole nother hour. Y'all want to slam it down? It's our best hour, local hour, coming up right now.
Welcome into Talk the Dog, the show where we find a bone to pick and a take to give. These are not hot takes. These is dog takes. Can I talk that dog? What's up? You really like that? Let's shut up and grind some tape.
Just having done 15 hours of content for 7 weeks in a row, 8, 9, 11 weeks in a row.
I'd say that's likely more of the cause.
You think so?
As much credit as I'd like to take for my comedic relief on the road trips, I would say that's probably more so the reason.
We're debating what's going on with my voice right now. I think it's a combination of a lot of things: lack of sleep, travel schedules, general sickness going around, that kind of joint. But yeah, we're fighting through. It'll be all right.
Traveling and lack of sleep is like one of the best ways to compromise your immune system. So,
Oh, she's compromised big time.
Yeah.
Big time. Welcome into our local hour. We got a loaded one for you. We're obviously going to talk ad nauseum about this loss Georgia suffered this past weekend out there at Ole Miss in Oxford. We'll give you our firsthand responses from that football game, what it felt like to be out there, all that good stuff. Kirby Smart had a press conference today. We'll give you the rundown on that good stuff. But first and foremost, I want to ask you to go ahead and hit that thumbs up button if you haven't already. A lot of people watching us right now. Not all of you have had 100% participation in that there like button. So go ahead and smash that sucker. If you're not already subscribed to this network, please go ahead and do that as well. Quick shout out to our friends over at BetUS. If you have not already, head over to BetUS. Use promo code YouTube150, okay, or use the link in the description of this video, and you will get 150% deposit match up to $2,000 on your first time deposit and 125% deposit match on your next 2 deposits. Again, that's using promo code YouTube150, the best place to be. Fastest withdrawal and deposit process in the industry over there at BetUS. Again, that promo code YouTube150. Boys, where do you want to start this here local hour with? And don't tell me presser notes. Let's just go ahead and rip the Band-Aid
Yeah, I was about
off.
to say, why don't we just go ahead and dive
start on
in?
this game?
All right, let's rip the Band-Aid off. Let's start with questions. First and foremost, why did this happen, boys?
There's a ton of nuances that you can say why it happened. You can chalk it up as a simple of you got beat on the line of scrimmage. You can then go into each nuance of you didn't have anyone make plays on the offensive side of the football. You consistently couldn't get off the field on defense. I mean, there's a ton of reasons why this happened. I don't think there's anything one specifically that points to it. But at the end of the day, yes, you got manhandled by a football team that, frankly, I don't think you should have been manhandled by.
I think that this game compiled every bit of concern that fans had about this team into one 4-quarter football game of there were drop passes, inconsistency in the wide receiver room. Offensive line has been a little shaky this year. You got completely blown up for 4 quarters. Run game, couldn't get that going at all. So I think that a lot of the concerns you had about this team really got emphasized in one game. You can say what you want about the defense. They did give up explosives, but I said after the game, I was like, man, your defense had you in a position to win that game. If you said going into the 4th quarter that Ole Miss would have 21 points, maybe it was 23, something
22.
like that, 22 points, you feel like you're in a good position to win that game. You're holding a Lane Kiffin offense to that, and that was the thing is your defense kept you in that football game because while Ole Miss was getting down to the other side of the field, what was happening is exactly what you were mentioning on Film Study last week of this team is not great in the red zone because they can't run the football. Georgia was stopping them, making them kick field goals, so the defense kept you in that game. It's just you could not get anything going on offense.
I kept saying on the live show yesterday, they only gave up 22 points, and people were like, Brooks, they scored 28. Guys, the last 2 field goals, first of all, you held them to field goals when their possessions started inside your own 30. Like, they had 3 points already because you were going for it on downs as an offense. So, Yeah, you go into that football game and you tell me they held that offense to 22 points. Great job. I mean, great job defense on that end. So, yeah, I was very confused as to see, looking on social media and seeing their very large and boisterous opinions about how bad the defense played. I'm like, good Lord, guys, that's the wrong one to be pointing at. Y'all pointed to it. It was obviously very simple. You couldn't block them on Saturday. And I want another opportunity to explain what was going on Saturday because I feel like I biffed it yesterday. I feel like I was way too complicated and way too many things up on the board. But Georgia is an inside zone and duo offense. That's what they are. And when you ask any offensive lineman, what is the key to blocking any stunts when you're running inside zone, they will tell you you have to stay on your track. Let's talk about what this means, okay? All right, so when I am an inside zone offense, we are blocking on what most teams will call the 45, okay? So I'm going to take a 6-inch step up and over. I'm going to match that with my second step, and I'm going to continue on that track all the way through the play, okay? So we are continuing and staying on our track. So what does the track look like? I just told you, it looks like a 45. Everybody's on their track. Now, ideally, we run into somebody on that track. Somebody's either in front of us, boom, nice and simple. If not, we're going to take our steps and we're going to stay on our track. And when somebody arises onto that track, we're going to take that human, okay? We're going to move that human against his will. Now, my question to anybody listening today, because as an offensive lineman that has been in these inside zone systems, I know what screws me up. What screws me up is when someone shows up onto my track that I didn't expect, all right? Somebody that was sitting in this gap that now jumps over and attacks my gap, and I wasn't necessarily expecting them. Or worse, stunts in between our two tracks. That's what happened Saturday. You see this viral clip of a guy splitting two Georgia offensive linemen. Both offensive linemen turn around and looking like this. Well, they had somebody stunt or slant into their track or off of their track, and that messes them up. Now, the only option to this, all right, is either to start running the ball outside, whether it be counters or whether it be end arounds or whether it be jet sweeps or truck tosses or whatever it is, because you can't handle this type of stuff happening to you on inside zone. And people will ask, well, did Georgia do that? Yes. I think a third play of the game, they tried to run counter, right, Jonathan? And Tate Rat was a little banged up. It didn't hit very well. It wasn't hitting very well all game. You couldn't quite get to it because you're banged up, all right? The other option is to outside zone these guys. So instead of being on these tracks where somebody slanting that you weren't necessarily expecting might throw you off, well, now instead of being that vertical, right, instead of being on this track, now we're going to take deep bucket steps and we're going to be an outside zone football team. And watch what happens to all of these tracks. Imagine this being 5 offensive linemen taking these steps in unison. What do you notice, Kirby and Jonathan? What do you notice about these tracks as I drew them up, as opposed to these 45-degree tracks that happen on inside zone? What do you notice?
You're allowing more space, I would say.
More space, but more importantly, what's happening? They are overlapping, right? These guys are overlapping in their track, which means as somebody jumping into them, now we have time and now we have space to actually respond to what's happening, and we can collect these things as they happen. As opposed to being on these real stern 45-degree angles on inside zone and duo, where one little stunt, we get split, and now all of a sudden we don't have time to react to them because we're moving forward while they're moving forward. Instead of, ooh, we're moving back, we have time to adjust and see all these things in front of us, and now we can get them captured. I think it's a way better job today than the way I did it yesterday, and I apologize for that. I'm glad I got a second opportunity at it. I hope that was a much clearer description of what I was trying to describe yesterday about, hey, man, inside zone is going to get killed. It's going to get killed by teams that are good stunters, all right? They had the players to do it, and they executed it as well. So my initial thought was like, hey, when are you going to get to some type of outside zone scheme, wide zone scheme? And as long as I've been here through 3 different coordinators, you've never done it. Mm-hmm. You didn't do it under Coley. You didn't do it under Monken. You're not doing it now under Bobo. So it leads me to believe that it's more of an ideology thing within the building. And I think maybe it might be something that might need to get changed.
Well, I guess I'll ask the $1 million question then of, is this something that you think can be implemented into a game plan in 1 week?
Because most systems have both. Most systems install both, right?
I would argue that you might not necessarily need to implement it in 1 week. I think that we've seen areas where Bobo has dialed up things where you can supplement attacking the outsides. We've seen end rounds. We've seen misdirections like that necessarily can still stretch a defense horizontally without having to change the entire offensive line scheme. So I think that's probably what you're going to be more capable.
Look, I'm not saying you got to come out and run 12 stretch zone plays on Saturday or the next time you play Ole Miss. But I think you had to have gone it. We watched against Arkansas, and it was very clear. We're like, hey, man, you're going to have to start running around these guys. You're going to have to start stretching them because they are stunting way too hard. And it's smacking centers and guards in the face unexpectedly, and it's driving them back. We got to start getting around these guys somehow. Now, Arkansas has those in the plans. They've been a wide zone football team for a couple of years, and even in years past. Georgia has never done it. It's just never been in the book. And I understand why. Georgia's always had 5 offensive linemen that can move you at your will. And by the way, when I'm looking for an ideal system, that's the ideal system where we don't have to trick you. Our shit's going to travel no matter what, because we're going to beat you at the line of scrimmage. But we laid out why they're not beating people at the line of scrimmage right now. They took 18 and a half months off from a recruiting cycles in 2023 and 2022, and they don't have the requisite players right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's really starting to rear its ugly head. And I think people kind of forget that what happens on the recruiting trail 2 and 3 years ago affects what happens today. So you're face to face with what was really poor recruiting at that position, at that room, and it's now it's not great, honestly.
Well, I think too, like certain positions, like positions that maybe you want to complain about, go and do that exercise with multiple rooms.
We did it with the DB room a couple of weeks back, where it's like, yeah, okay, y'all want to talk about Dalen Everett and Julian Humphrey and Daniel Harris and why isn't Ellis Robinson playing? Well, the reality is those were the best guys available, and guys like A.J. Harris are having to go elsewhere and play for Penn State. And there's a litany of those where, like, you swing and miss on Jaheim Singletary a couple classes ago. Justin Rhett hasn't played meaningful minutes. Like, we can do this across a bunch of positions, some of the positions that have caused issues this year.
And I think too, like, the more important thing is that I'm trying to get at is certain coaches' necks are being put on the block right now. You guys are going after the wrong people. Mm-hmm. Like if you like, I think it is hilarious to think that just because wide receivers are dropping the ball, that it's James Coley's fault that this just now started happening. I don't understand the connect there, that just because your wide receivers can't catch the ball, that's a coach's fault. Mm-hmm. I think that, just do the exercise. That's what I would say. Going
back to another thing that you said, it's not necessarily also that you're having misses. I mean, you're going to have guys that transfer out that don't pan out as much as in any position, anytime you're recruiting. You could have the best recruiting class ever. You're still going to have that. It's more about your hits haven't been home run grand slams. You don't have a Kamari Lassiter on your roster. You don't have Javon Bullard. You don't have Brock Bowers. Guys that are still good starters for you aren't necessarily reaching the star potential that you've seen in the past. I mean, go look at the NFL right now. All those guys that we mentioned are lighting it up. Like, those were once-in-a-lifetime talents that you necessarily can't just plug and play and replace. And I think you're starting to see that attrition.
And there's also been this other conversation in the Georgia fandom about regression. The word regression keeps coming up. Why are people regressing? And I've always approached development in terms of players this way. It's 50-50. It's very much so the environment that they're in, but it's also on the player themselves. Mm-hmm. And here's what I want to tell everybody about where's the development? What's up with all this regression of each of these individual athletes, right? But for every player that you think has regressed, I can bring you a Kristen Miller that's shown tremendous amounts of development this year. For every player that you want to say has regressed, I can bring you a Dan Jackson who's playing the best football of his life right now. Yep. For every player that has regressed, I can look at you and say, well, Raylan Wilson doesn't look like a freshman at linebacker anymore. I can do this over and over again. So what I'm telling you is that the progression has been, or what you claim is regression for some players, has been very sporadic, which tells me that's not something to point to as an area of issue or an area of concern. There's obviously other concerns available.
I think it could still be an area of concern without saying it's necessarily a reason of, hey, this is your fault, ex-coach. This is the player's fault. It's something where you kind of look at it and go, what the heck? I mean, the receiver room, no one's really developed there. I don't think that's through the fault of anyone. Like, Dylan Bell is not what he was last year. I think that's safe to say. Dom Lovett's kind of been on par, but he's had also moments where it's like, that does not look like Dom Lovett that we've seen the last 2 seasons in the SEC. So I get that kind of sense of, where is this regression coming from? But you are right. It's not a coaching thing. Like, it's not like the entire roster has gone downhill. It's not like you're looking at Florida State right now. That's not the type of regression you're seeing. But you're seeing more regression in certain players than you've seen in Georgia teams in the past, I think.
I don't think there's any way I can coach you to catch footballs.
No.
Is there?
Get reps.
Get reps? Lord knows they're getting plenty of those.
Look, to me, it's no different than, like, you want to get better at shooting the basketball, you got to shoot. But there's also to an extent of you either got it or you don't. I can go shoot 1,000 basketballs every single day, and I will certainly see progression in that area of my game. But I'm not, just because I shoot 1,000 times a day doesn't mean, I'm eventually going to develop into Steph Curry. I don't have that in me. That's not in my game. So you can go and catch as many footballs as you want, and you will get better at it. But there's also a ceiling that you hit where this is who you are. This is your ceiling. That's you can only get so good at something.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just one of those years, I think, honestly, where it's just been like you can't explain leading the FBS in drops.
No.
That's inexcusable, but it's also not something where it's like the coaching staff isn't hammering this out, the players aren't doing this correctly. Like, we know that these guys are catching. Dylan Bell was almost a bucket for 50-50 balls last year. Now he's catching comebacks off his face mask.
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand that. I don't think anyone could explain it.
I don't understand how we drop that ball, but we catch a deep over with a safety just absolutely blowing us up. But we catch it. It's like so inconsistent, so weird.
It's got to be something. A lot of it's got to be mental, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like, now that by now this is known. Like, this is a known thing, and obviously you as a player know too. Like, when you've had multiple moments where you don't catch a ball where you probably should have. I mean, yeah, that sits in the back of your mind. It has to. So, I mean, you would think eventually that you would get over the mental threshold of it, but I don't know.
Saw people firing James Coley because the room's not good enough, and dude just got there in January.
Yeah,
dude just got there in January and signing the best class.
And that's what I was about to say is, what was every Georgia fan wanting like 8 months ago from this? When Brian McClendon was here, it was, man, Georgia just is not recruiting dudes at the wide receiver room. Like, what do we have to do? I mean, heck, this was a conversation a month ago of what can Georgia do to get some dudes in this wide receiver room and start getting these 5-star caliber players? Well, now you have two of them. They're not 5 stars, but they're borderline. They're as good as it gets if it isn't a 5-star. Like, what you wanted is what you got right now in James Coley.
So who or what is to blame? I've kind of laid it out. I think it's a recruiting issue for 2 straight years on the offensive line. And when you get banged up in today's world, like, you're already going to be thin because of the portal.
Right.
But when you take 2 years basically off from recruiting and only land 2 starters and 1 meaningful backup, like, you're going to struggle when injuries start to arise.
For sure. And I think it's easier to say who's not to blame in this instance. And everyone holds some form of responsibility for a loss like that. But saying this is a Bobo instance, this is on Carson Beck, this is on X whatever player you want to say, or X whatever coach, I think that's irresponsible. I think it's more of just an accumulation of, you've played a really, really tough slate on the road the past 4 weeks. You have not played in Athens in over a month, combined with the fact that you came into a game that I think the other team was more ready for. I don't think that's crazy to say. I don't know if necessarily you can point a finger at one thing specifically. I mean, you've got people on Twitter right now firing everyone but Kirby Smart and benching everyone but Dan Jackson.
I don't know, dude in the gas station leaving Oxford, man, was delivering takes.
Just to anybody that would listen.
I want to hear that story.
We were all in line waiting to buy our midnight burritos from the gas station that have been sitting there since 4 o'clock.
They banged.
And man in front of me goes, Georgia will never win another national title until they fire Kirby Smart.
Interesting.
And this was not probed.
No.
This was
nobody was even talking to him.
No. He's standing.
We were
at
having
the cash
football
register.
conversations with an Ole Miss fan who recognized us for our work in the gas station. And we're having a conversation about the game. And then, man, just into the ether, Kirby needs to be fired.
Yeah, said it to the guy working the cash register.
Was this a Georgia fan who said this? Or
I have no idea.
I couldn't tell. Wasn't decked out in the G, but maybe that's why. Maybe he took it off and changed shirts because he was so disrespected.
Might have.
So upset.
Man, how
so irrationally angry.
Yeah, there's been a lot of that.
I told him to look out for the DUI checkpoints on the way home.
How do you take that?
I don't think he got the joke. He said, "Appreciate you, man."
Maybe
like, bro, you are shit-housed right now. Do not get in that car. I hope you are Mike Gundy drunk right now. What's next, guys? What's next for this football team?
Beat Tennessee. That's what you got to do.
I mean, it's fairly simple here. Like,
damn, Kirby, I didn't know Kirby Smart just showed up. Trying to do a content hour right now.
Is it not that simple though? Is it not?
I mean, it is.
It's as simple as you win Saturday. Your season is still ahead of you. You lose Saturday, you are not playing in the college football playoff. I mean, it is that simple. That's what it boils down to this year, and it's something that we talked about in the preseason of your season could potentially boil down to this of you have 3 tough road games. There's a possibility that you only win one of those, which you're still in the race for if you lose 2 of those. But you got to beat Tennessee at the end of the year. You can't lose any more after that. So the fact that you can walk into a home game against Tennessee at night, your first home game back in 4 weeks or however long it is, the fact that you can go into this game and still have everything in front of you, that's a big deal. And it provides you it should provide a lot of juice in Sanford Stadium this weekend, I should say, or at least I hope it does.
So as far as the immediate what's next, Jay Will is absolutely
hold on. 93,000 people. We shouldn't be hoping for a good hostile environment on Saturday. That ought to be predetermined.
I agree.
I'll be showing up ready to get lit on Saturday night. Period.
Agreed.
Go ahead.
Jay Will's right. The immediate thing to do for Georgia is, yes, focus on Tennessee. We have to beat them. If we don't beat them, our season's effectively over. It comes down to, can we beat Tennessee and can we continue to have this path of success against UMass and Georgia Tech and then see what shakes out in the playoff? That's the immediate thing. I think moving forward, there has to be some emphasis put on the recruiting trail. And obviously, Kirby Smart's always going to do that. And I think that what happened in 22 and in the coming years ahead of that are showing its ugly head at this point now. But I think also Georgia needs to put an emphasis on finding guys with dog-like traits. There doesn't seem to be as much of a killer on the offensive side of the ball this year or the defensive side. There's Jalen Walker, and he's definitely the alpha guy. But last year it was Kamari Lasser, Javon Bullard. Years before that, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Nakobe Dean. Guys like that, where it was not, even if they are top talent guys, but it was also they had a certain edge to them that you need on a defense. You need the same thing on offenses. Brock Bowers, while he wasn't a showman or anything like that, had this dog-like mentality. Lad McConkey when he needed to. Stetson Bennett, all of these things. I think that's what's kind of lacking from Georgia this year. And that's not necessarily something you can measure. That's not something you go out and test with a 40 time on the trail. That's something you have to just find in players and honestly sometimes get lucky with. But I think the attrition of that is starting to show as well now.
Look, I left Hunter Lacey's super chat here, or as we call him around here, super chubs, for a reason, because I think it lays into this what's next category. And he asked, would you agree between 2024 and 2025, the classes, that the future looks extremely promising? Yes, I would 100% agree with that, particularly on this offensive line front that we're talking about in 2024. They signed 6 guys in that 2024 class that they like a lot, okay? They signed 5 of the top 32 ranked players. They signed 5 of the top 32 ranked players at the offensive line position a year ago and a 6th that was in the top 75 at the position. They're going to be much, much better moving forward at this spot. And it showed its ugly head that you took 2 years off, but 2024 is really, really good. Now, I want to address something about 2025 because I've seen people hop up in the mentions today talking about, ooh, he's only got 1 4-star interior offensive lineman. Buddy, if you're reading 24/7 rankings about Juan Gaston and you think he's not about to be what he's about to be, I don't know what to tell you. Stop trusting some of that other stuff because this dude is 6'8", 340 pounds, probably playing about 365 right now, but that's beside the point. Okay, when he gets to Georgia, he's going to be a first-round caliber tackle if things go the way that I think they're going to go. Okay, this was Amarius Mims of this class. This was Broderick Jones of this class, and he was highly, highly sought after. From big boys, Tennessee in the mix, Oregon in the mix, and we know what that means. Stacey Searles got that guy to stay. Stacey Searles is doing what he's supposed to do in 2024, is doing what he's supposed to do in 2025. They feel really good about what's coming in and what is already there. We talked about this yesterday. And my God, look what James Coley's doing in 2025 at the receiver position. So, yeah, you're good.
College football fans are very reactionary. And, I mean, sporting fans in general are very reactionary. Whatever costs you something that day, that's what needs immediate fix. That's what needs to be immediately dumped off. Of offensive line didn't play great today. Get rid of Stacey Searles. Oh my gosh, we just can't do anything. We're dropping passes. Get rid of James Coley. Fire him. Get rid of all of them. We only scored 10 points today. Mike Bobo, get out of here. Carson Beck couldn't put the ball in the end zone. We need to bench Carson Beck. We need to put someone else. Very reactionary. But you could very easily go into this weekend. You beat Tennessee by, we'll say, 10 points or something like that. No one's talking about that. Everybody's talking about, man, Can you believe that this Georgia team survived this slate? They're about to be a college football playoff team, it looks like. They walked away with 2 losses that only Kirby Smart could walk into this schedule, and this coaching staff and this group of players could walk into this schedule and survive and make it to a college football playoff. It's all reactionary based. Whatever cost you that day, that's what everybody's going to be complaining about.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head with that. And the same thing happened in the Alabama game where the entire message was Kirby Smart needs to get a dual-threat quarterback. We're not going to win a national title if Kirby Smart doesn't have a dual-threat quarterback. Look what Jalen Milroe just did to us. It's tail as well as time we need a dual-threat quarterback. I mean, you've had these same problems after every loss. So
Georgia fans will tell you Stetson was a dual threat because he kept a couple of read options and had that one quarterback draw that one time.
Stetson was not a dual threat, but he was a threat.
He was a plus athlete.
In the running.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Wasn't a dual threat.
No.
Here's how you know when dual threats exist. Are they, like, read options are one thing, keeping it out the back is one thing. Are they running quarterback counter? Are they running quarterback power? Are they out here running quarterback lead?
Now,
are they
to be
doing
fair,
that?
They did do that with Stetson Bennett.
How many times? Is it like red zone, or are we talking
red
about
zone.
moving the chains on 3rd and 4 with a quarterback design run?
It was red zone.
It was red zone. That's a totally different equation. And that's what I'm trying to lay out to you. He was not a dual threat. He was a guy whose legs, like the chat said, kept you honest. And is that needed? Yeah. But that's something that we could probably tell, Carson maybe to do a little bit more of if they felt comfortable about their backup, which is a discussion that came up today. Kirby was asked, have you thought about replacing Carson? And he quickly said no.
I mean,
a firm head shake over here.
Because people who walked away from Saturday specifically, and they wanted to point the finger at Carson Beck, and they wanted to point the finger at Mike Bobo.
You mean like Joey Galloway on College Football Final reading the box score?
Yes, exactly. Those types of people. What were those 2 individuals supposed to do on Saturday? I mean, every single time you go back and watch the film, anytime Carson Beck is dropping back, there's a guy in his face. As soon as he's turning around to see the fielder, I mean, like within 2 seconds, he's getting pressured. When your offensive line or the defensive line is getting pressure at that high of rate and that quickly, I mean, your offense is cooked. I don't care what you're calling out. And Bobo was trying. We saw it in the 27 plays that we watched today of, oh, that didn't work. Well, we can set this up maybe and we could get something going here, like the screen and go. Like we got shut down on the screen. They're getting too aggressive there. Let's try the screen and go. Well, you had it.
Tackle beat clean.
I mean, and it was that every single time. I mean, unless it was Nate Frazier or Trevor Etienne making the offensive line right like they have all season, or Carson Beck throwing a dot to wide receiver and them catching the ball, you couldn't do anything. I don't know how you walk away from that game and it's like, oh, well, Bobo and Beck cost us the game today. They were trying everything.
Now, here's what I will say. And I know I've done the research because you did the research for me about the situation where Carson's caught on television smiling. But there is no situation in the world where that scenario right there doesn't go terribly wrong for you unless you win that football game. When you're down 12 in the 4th quarter on the road with a national championship contending football team and a fan base that expects that, you got to be over there looking like you're sick to your stomach and pissed off the entire time. There's no other acceptable emotion on the sideline from this fan base. And by the way, I'm with you. I'm with you to an extent. I'm not going to say that's why, like, he's a loser. He's got loserment. No, I'm going to say it was a bad moment, and it was a very brief moment, about a half a second where his teeth are smiling. But period, point blank, can't be on the sideline smiling in that football game. And guess what? I guarantee you the rest of his career, Carson Beck is never seen smiling when down in a football game. He will learn from this one because it was a bad look, period.
Because I was watching on TV, as soon as I saw that thing, I said, oh, my God, the internet is going to run with this.
Yep.
It was very clear Jaden Rashad was talking to him when the game at that point had effectively been lost. I think there were, 2 minutes left. They had just fumbled once again. Jaden Rashad was saying something, and he kind of smiled and just shrugged it off. Like, yes, it's a horrible look, and yes, it's unfortunate the internet does that. I get you can't put yourself in that situation. I also think that as media members, as fans, don't be so reactive to it. And especially Georgia fans. Let the national media say whatever they want about it. Let opposing fan bases do that. for Georgia fans to run with this and say, like, oh, my God, Carson Beck doesn't care about this team. The guy sat on the bench 3 years, never once entered the transfer portal. Came back for a 5th season because he talked about how much he wanted his own championship. Said he had aspirations of being a Heisman Trophy winner and the #1 overall quarterback. Has lost millions and millions of dollars this season. Like, let's be fair. This has affected Carson Beck more than anyone. To accuse him of not caring about your season, your team, or whatever because he was seen smiling for half a second on half of a game, it's irresponsible by the fan base. I get that the national media and all the other opposing fan bases are going to do what they want with it, and I get if you're Carson Beck, maybe don't put yourself in that situation. I will say, to his fairness, though, he smiles a lot. He was smiling coming out of the tunnel. Most of the times they come off the field on drives, he's smiling, whether it goes well or goes bad. If you go watch a lot, Carson Beck smiles a good bit. But again, to accuse him of not caring about the team or to use that as hate for him, it's irresponsible as the fan base.
I do agree that the one snapshot is a bad look, especially when it is taken out of context and all someone sees is, oh, Georgia's down multiple scores and the quarterback is smiling. What looks like he doesn't care. But again, that was like less than 1% of the amount of TV time that football game aired, and they found the one moment. I mean, the camera was put on Carson Beck for one moment, and he cracked a smile. And then shortly after, it was straight face. And I would say that I think it's unfair to judge somebody's character, and it's unfair to judge somebody in a split-second screenshot of how they feel about this team or what how they're feeling in that type of moment. I would say that watching Carson Beck deliver his post-game press conference, the way that he talked in that setting, that told me that Carson Beck cares a lot more than anybody. I know why you're smiling, but I would say that he cares more than anybody. And I know that that's been said by multiple people that are close to him, that he if you know him, he cares more than anybody. I think it was unfair. I understand, though, bad time to be smiling.
All right. I'm going to lighten the mood here by absolutely cooking my man right quick. He's very into designer clothing. You know this.
Yeah.
You know this about him. He showed up to that post-game press conference in what I can only assume was a fit worth about $2,000.
I have no idea.
I have no idea either. But Kirby, it was an oversized black sweatshirt and oversized black sweatpants. And this ain't Carson. This is all you young people. I don't understand young people that pay a bunch of money to look like they're in pajamas. I don't understand this. I don't get this at all. Can you explain this trend to me? Is this Kanye's fault? Whose fault is this?
Fashion, man.
Whose fault is this in the fashion world where we got young people out here paying thousands of dollars to look like they in some PJs? I don't understand this at all. He wasn't even in Black Forces. He was in designer black shoes that look like Black Forces that I could only assume cost hundreds of dollars. It was absurd.
Oh, Brooks, get off my lawn, Austin over here.
I mean, yeah.
Put your khakis in a polo on and go to work.
Why are you paying $60 for our jeans that have holes in them?
Bro, you just cooked me.
Yeah. That's kind of what it sounded like right then.
Yeah, it did.
Why are you paying $60 for jeans that already have holes in them?
It was funny,
It's
though.
the same thing. I mean,
60. He had hundreds of dollars.
I mean,
of
that's
sweats on.
just the older generation.
It was
It's
funny,
it's
though,
fashion.
because me and Brooks are standing at the like right at the door where the players are walking. So much so that Brooks is holding the door for when the players are coming in because it's so crowded in there.
And because I'm a good man.
And because he's just a good guy. But as soon as Carson walks in and I see his face, I was like, oh, I immediately look at Brooks and Brooks goes, I just knew, like, oh, this is going to get a reaction.
What is man's wearing?
Fashion is subjective, man. I'm sure there are people that have something to say about our 3 fashion choices.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
in fact, there were people. There was live chats tonight talking about it.
Good stuff. That was a goofy moment, as was Jake Pope's moment after the football game.
This is more of for everything you want to say.
I
about
understand the lambasting of this.
Yeah, and this is more like for the people giving Carson Beck gap for saying, "Hey, you can't put yourself in this situation." This more than anything applies to Jake Pope. What the hell are you doing? I get cracking a smile and dapping someone up and seeing someone you haven't seen in 5 years, seeing a high school teammate. I even get that when you're just coming off the field after a loss. And believe me, as someone who was on JV freshman year, when you don't play that much, you're not as emotionally invested into the game. So I
played
get
JV freshman year. Couldn't be me.
I would tore my label.
Ooh, didn't know we were in the presence of such highly regarded
Sending
athletes.
shots. We both got shorter offers. It's okay. Anywho, don't jump up and down with them while they're celebrating, especially when they're wearing Ole Miss gear. This was just this was a horrible lapse of judgment.
Do we have the Kirby sound?
Yeah, because I think Kirby
He says it perfectly.
Yeah, he does.
He says it better than any of the three of us can ever say it.
Yeah, what an idiot. I mean, just stupid. I didn't see it till today, but he's embarrassed about it. He's upset about it. That's obviously a childhood friend of his. He grew up and played with there at Buford and knows him, hadn't seen him in forever, but just not real smart. But to be honest with you, I don't have time to waste energy on that. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like my focus is on Tennessee. I'm not worried about that.
What an idiot.
I think that's the first time
Off top, what an idiot.
Yeah. I thought it was a fake quote when I first saw it.
Yeah, I think that's the first time I've heard Kirby Smart like openly criticize a person like from like that. Like he's done the that was a dumb decision. Yeah, we can't make stupid decisions. Yeah, that's stupid. I've never heard him flat out say what an idiot. And I mean,
look, and this is the thing too. Like as soon as, especially by now, like anytime there's a field storming, you know what's happening. I mean, you got students and everybody and their mama coming down to the field doing one of these. Got the phone out, just recording anything and everything because there's going to be a viral moment. There's going to be something that happens on that football field that is going to get thousands and thousands of likes on Twitter. So everybody's got their phones out. And so especially in those situations now, and especially since we have seen what happens in these moments, you have to be so aware and cautious of what you are doing as a football player, as a coach of anybody, heck, even as a fan, knowing what you are doing in that moment because somebody's going to have it on video. It's going to be caught by somebody.
Yeah, and I mean, we've been on the field for handfuls of games where the opposing team and the winning team, there's a meetup of two guys that are very happy to see each other, smiles,
There was an
taking
Ole Miss
pictures.
player that ran clear across the field that was greeting Jalen Walker. They thought they were about to get into a fight, and Jalen Walker and the Ole Miss guys had to look at security like, no, we're friends. Like, we're friends. They dapped each other up, gave each other a hug, told each other they loved him, went on their separate ways. Different.
I can't tell you about the number of times where I've seen two guys from the opposing team both smiling, winning or losing after victory, posing for photos, all that stuff. That happens. They're not jumping up and down with people that were in the crowd, and that's where, I mean, you don't need to elaborate why it was a dumb decision. So.
No. And Kirby, as usual, at the end of that said, I don't have time to really put a bunch of concerted effort towards this. I'm moving on to Tennessee. Speaking of Kirby, have some more press conference notes for you. No thoughts of sitting Carson Beck. We talked about that earlier. As we told you last week during the Colby Young news announcement, yes, the lady that was involved in the incident has released a new statement and a new affidavit releasing him of any type of wrongdoing. However, the district attorney is still actively in the midst of, I guess, proceeding with charges, has not dropped them. We should say that. So there's still a legal process going on. That's what Kirby alluded to today. Said the legal process still got to play out. Did mention, though, that Colby is using the team facilities and is still working out and doing things like that. Said they're doing everything they can to help Colby out during this situation. Talked about the Jake Pope stuff. They are a one-game mentality. Obviously, they were asked a bunch of times about, being a two-loss team and this being win or go home type of scenarios with the playoffs. Are you guys in a playoff mindset? That type of question. And to typical Georgia avail, we're worried about Tennessee. That's all we're worried about. We got to go beat Tennessee. Said execution is the biggest thing missing on offense. Yes and no. Yes, you lead the nation in drops. Yes, you've had a couple of one-on-ones lost in the offensive line room. No, you don't have a bunch of busted assignments, things like that. But it's not 100% execution, is it?
I don't think that's what Kirby's trying to tell you. I think it's more that, hey, we've got situations to we can put players in winning situations, and we have things that will work if we're able to execute them. I don't think Kirby Smart saying that's the only issue we have. I mean, there have been some.
I also don't think Kirby's going to stand in front of the microphone and point out his holes in his roster.
Exactly.
No, he's not.
So.
He's not a Hugh Freeze.
I thought it was very interesting when asked about Ernest's play and Ernest's development that he was very forthcoming about an injury that nobody knew about.
Yeah.
No coincidence in the timing of this. Just
Probably
had one
not.
of his worst games.
Yeah.
People are coming for 71 to be replaced. So we let everybody know the 71's been out here fighting, just fighting through an injury. Mm-hmm. And that explains a little bit to me why our hand shock, we saw he wasn't touching soles in pass protection. Yeah, he was getting ran by, but he wasn't getting hands on either, and that's a major problem.
You got a super sub.
Yeah, I see that from Bill Villy. I see a lot of Jaden no gunner near huddles. Why? I think that has been alluded to with regards to Jaden and Carson's relationship. I think those guys are just close friends. Everyone I talk to says Gunner's the backup, by the way. So I don't know.
I think it's too, like, they obviously have a great relationship, but also this is a guy that just got in this room not too long ago. Why would you not be holding the starting quarterback's hand and being in every single huddle, sitting by his side at every single moment that you can to absorb anything and everything, especially with how people talk about Carson, how much of an intellectual he is about this game? I mean, why would you not be sitting around that guy and trying to absorb anything and everything?
Yeah, and they talk about it. Jaden Rashada has been a sponge since he stepped foot in Athens, and I think you see that firsthand when he's going into huddles and things like that. I don't think it's them saying, hey, Jaden, get in here. We need you to hear this in case you have to hear it, and Gunner, sit down on the bench. That's not what it is. I just think that Jaden Rashada is making such a concerted effort to be near Carson Beck all the time that when Carson Beck is on TV on the sidelines, you're going to see stuff like that.
What do you guys see?
Jaden Rashada sitting next to
Carson. But I see the backup sitting next to the coach. That's what I see. Okay? I see Jaden looking over the shoulder of Carson, and I see Gunner looking over the shoulder of Gummy. Okay? Not that means everything, all right, but it does. All right? While they're sitting there making in-game adjustments, the two sitting right there with him. And those guys sit in the order that they sit in by design. All right? So I felt necessary to pull that up right now. Also, in that photo, and I think this should be alluded to because we're sitting here talking about this. I think Jaden Rashada has approached this season as professional as any young quarterback that I've seen since doing this. Like that example, and I'm not poking fun at Ryan Puglisi, but you watch Saturday on the sideline, there's very clearly a freshman who knows he's a freshman that's the 4 on the depth chart right now that's just, practicing and being a freshman. And then there's a redshirt freshman right there in Rashada who has been very glued in to absolutely everything, so much so that he's so close to the stuff going on during timeouts that you guys think he's the backup. That speaks volumes of how he has approached this, not anything else about what's going on in the room, in my opinion. So I think there's a point right there to point out just how professional this guy has approached this all year. Not to say the other guys haven't, but that guy has certainly approached this like a veteran.
Absolutely. I would agree with that.
1,000%.
All right, reaction to Oxford as a whole. What were your thoughts there, Jay Will? Because I got a couple.
I was so disappointed that it rained because I think it did kind of put a dampening on the overall environment of the Grove. I mean, we walked around for an hour and a half, and we stood in under somebody's tent that never showed up. Got to watch some SEC Nation for a little bit and stay dry. But I thought it was cool. I thought it was very unique, especially you telling me that there's power outlets in the trees and people put chandeliers up in their tents and whatnot. It is a very professional setting in the sense that every tent that you walk by and everything, there's no cutting corners. Everything is done in a very professional manner. But I just didn't feel any juice. I didn't feel any buzz. There was nobody just blasting music, nobody really cutting up. And again, I think that did have to do with the weather and whatnot. But I thought it was very unique.
Yeah. So it's it's a tailgating scene. They just squeeze everybody into the same spot. Tents are literally blockaded next to one another. They're pre-set up, all that good stuff. It's a tremendous tailgating experience, and that's what it is. It's a 100% immersive tailgate experience. But I'm with you in the sense that, we rolled out there at 10 o'clock, no juice. Now, a lot to do with the rain, I would imagine. So yeah, there was that. But the outlets in the trees were kind of cool.
Yeah, and I think everything about Ole Miss is very unique.
Delightful people. Student section, very, very, very volatile.
Yeah, I could see that.
As expected.
But the downtown
this was different.
The downtown,
buddy, I've seen student sections in the SEC. I know what they are. This was different. This was
okay. Geez.
This was you'd hope if you were a student in that student section, your future employers don't have any type of idea what was said.
As expected.
No. Bro, it took me 30 seconds to hear the cancelable ones.
Again, not surprised.
I am. I've been to Texas. We went to Alabama this year.
Been to Tennessee.
very rarely do I hear the hard F thrown out within like 5 seconds.
Oh, all the time.
Okay. We got different student sections going on, I guess. Either way. I will say this. I saw something Saturday I've never seen before.
What's
Never.
that?
I always stand in the end zone during pregame warmups. Always. In the same spot. I like to be over by the offensive line. Like to see what's going on. Like to see who's healthy, all that good stuff. And there is obviously, he's not a student, very obviously an Ole Miss defensive staffer standing in the end zone, chirping at not Georgia coaches, but Georgia players. Like, was obviously trying to get one of them to respond. He got Micah Morris to respond. And then all of a sudden, him and Micah Morris are in a very, very heated shit-talking battle going on between what is an SEC staffer and an SEC football player in a pregame. Something I've never seen before. I've seen players get at it. I've seen players start to chirp at other players. I've never seen a staffer start to chirp at another player. It got to a point where two Georgia staffers had to walk over there and kind of stand in between Micah Morris and this Ole Miss staffer. To the point, at that point, where the Ole Miss staffer just started to peek over the shoulder of those two Georgia staffers and continue to talk shit. And I thought, A, new, never seen it. B, very unprofessional. Whatever. We're just trying to get under some people's skin. Then, at the end of the football game, Ole Miss clearly controlling it, clearly winning the football game. Lane Kiffin's over there calling timeouts just to rub the nose of Kirby Smart in it. I thought that was very disrespectful as well. But you know what? You're the losing football team. If the other coach wants to rub your nose in it, I guess he gets the right to do that. I felt like that was weird. I felt like it was unprofessional.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a page out of Urban Meyer's book. He did that against Georgia in the Georgia-Florida game. He burned all his timeouts to make sure that loss really set in for them. But I was just shocked by it because just last week we were saying like these guys like to compete against one another, Kirby and Lane, and it's obvious that they kind of have this brotherly relationship, or what it seems to be of. Yeah, they're going to talk crap to one another. They're going to do the thing, but there's still some type of respect for one another. So I was shocked to see Lane start burning timeouts to be like, big middle finger to you, take this one on the chin.
And look, like I understand that part is I'm gonna be a brother to my brother on the other side. I'm gonna give him some shit right now. The pregame staffer was weird. I've never seen that. I don't like hearing that. I've seen SEC staffers stand at the 50 or stand in the end zone and literally scout the other team for portal purposes. Like, hey, who's this third stringer that looks really good? We might contact him in October and in December. I've seen that before. I haven't seen this. I haven't seen a staffer dedicated to standing over there to talk shit to players. That's new.
Yeah, seemed to work. Like, as much as I would agree with you, and as much as I would say, yeah, that is unprofessional by Lane Kiffin, you did beat them by 18 points. So
sure.
And you did everything you said you needed, all the roster talent and the NIL backing to do.
Absolutely.
So, again, it's the old adage, if you don't want to do it, stop them from doing it.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
And again, with the timeouts, I'm here for you. The pregame antics were different.
Yeah.
Never seen that.
Yeah, not really a huge fan of another coach trying to pick, like, singling out specific players.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to be fair, I was watching the game. There were some sideline cuts of coaches on Georgia's sideline chirping players. So
okay,
it was a hostile game. I think.
It was from Jump Street.
Yeah. What was it like to be on the field while the field storm happened?
I wanted to be out there. First of all, I went and put my camera up, so nothing
Smart.
was
Good
breakable. And then I just wanted to be a part of it because I hadn't been a part of it.
Yeah.
Chaos, about like you thought. There was one security guard. I thought the interesting thing was they popped the clutch on it. Obviously, turnover on down, 16 seconds left in the game. They start storming the field. Also,
idiots.
They put a announcement while guys are already jumping off of the wall with 2 minutes left. They started storming the field with 2 minutes left.
They showed that on camera.
Okay.
Like people were hopping down.
While there was a message on the board saying, stay off the field. We will be fined $350,000. If you storm the field, you will be kept out of games. And I'm standing next to the primary security guard. And I point at the board and I say, is that for real? And he's like, oh, no, they're just saying that to say that. They're storming this bitch.
Yeah, they're not stopping them.
No, they're not.
Bro, you're
at all.
not stopping
Bro,
60,000 people.
The security guards with the little
With the yellow rope.
With the yellow rope. And
Like that's doing anything.
Everybody just continued to do, like, you're not holding them back with that, buddy.
Many a woman fell down in that. I saw a couple fall down trying to get off of the wall. I saw one girl get absolutely obliterated by another fan, just absolutely truck sticked in the middle of my video.
Hey, you assume the risk.
In one of my videos, I've zoomed down at the lady that's on the ground, and she's just like looking up like, what in the world just happened?
That's what you get.
And then there was one fan that got way too close to Kirby. And
Dude, the stadium popped him.
yeah, security popped him in
Ooh.
the face and said, get the fuck out of here.
Ooh.
Shout out to security.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also, no shout out to security as well at Ole Miss. I was running around that stadium.
This is a problem at a lot of SEC stadiums I've found.
We couldn't find parking. Asked 3 people. Had no idea where our lot was.
Nobody.
Straight up said no idea where that is until we find a Ole Miss parking lot security lifer who knew exactly every turn we needed to make him where
I've been
it was.
here 7 years.
Yeah.
If people just listen to me, we wouldn't have no traffic.
One of those. But immediately after the game, I'm trying to get to the press conference, which I knew it was going to be hard to get to anyways. But the Ole Miss press box is connected to the suites that fans use. So everybody's using the same elevator. Well, by the time I got to the elevator, there was a flood of fans just standing there waiting. So I was like, well, definitely not getting down there in time. So my immediate thought was take the stairs, try and find a way down to the bottom level. Well, I couldn't find any stairs down to the bottom level. I was like, I'll just hop the wall like everybody else, and I'll find my spot to the press conference until I asked 3 security guards, hey, where are press conferences? Have no idea. Don't even know. Until the final guy asked, he said, oh, yeah, I'll let you through here. Just take a look around, see if you can find it, to where I finally opened the right door.
It was a very similar instance for me at Texas. I can say it now because, I mean, it's 3 weeks removed, but I was trying to find the box for the Texas game and somehow ended up on the field like 10 minutes before the game started. It was just like, all right, sick. I mean, at one
I think
point,
I'm going to hang out here.
At one point, security like let me go through like where Texas comes out of their locker room, and I was in like Texas's big media suites and all that. Like the security there is not top notch in all these environments.
At Georgia, it's like trying to get into the White House, though.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
It's weird.
The
It's
amount of
weird.
security that's
I mean,
at Georgia.
shoot, when we were at Auburn, they literally walk you through the recruiting lounge.
Dude, yeah, they do. I walked out with Malachi Starks Saturday. As they came out for pregame, I'm standing at the locker room, and I'm just like, you know what? I'm gonna just walk right out with them because there's no security at all.
Someone's listening to this now. We're gonna get tackled next time we try this. But then again, we don't have any
They're
more
the
road
dweebs.
We don't have any more road games for the SEC this season,
Yeah,
so
no.
we're chilling.
Yeah.
I mean,
Other than that,
Athens is already like Fort Knox, so
Ole Miss people were great, especially the ones up in the box that I interacted with.
Yeah,
I thought they were fantastic.
good people.
Shout out to my man Chuck.
Chuck, you had good things to say about Chuck.
Yeah, I had a he sat down with like an hour before kickoff, and he immediately goes, "Hey, my name's Chuck. If you need anything, let me know." And he was just like, if you need to know where something is, need to know information about this or that, I'm your guy. So I was like, this is a great person to be sitting next to. But the best thing about Chuck that I enjoyed the most was sitting next to him and listening to his commentary about the game. Now, this is a guy that I did some research about him, has been in the Ole Miss beat for a long time. Like,
He's an OG.
he is an OG. He probably about as OG as it gets for covering Ole Miss football. And just listening to him, like his commentary throughout the game, his thoughts on Lane Kiffin and it was just a great hang. I enjoyed my time sitting next to him.
I love a good fellow beat reporter from the other team hang.
Yeah.
You know, as long as they're good people.
Yeah, he was great.
And they were all good people. So shout out to those guys. I don't have any other thoughts on this football game. Did we miss anything tonight?
I mean, this was bound to happen at some point the way they had played the previous 8 weeks. And I think that it's unfortunate to say that, but there hasn't been a game this season where you look around and say, you know what, Georgia played a complete 4-quarter football game. And the more you do that on the road where you don't complete a 4-quarter football game, the more games you have like that, eventually you're going to get caught. I mean, you were able to overcome it in Texas. You overcame 3 interceptions. You overcame a first-half turnover that eventually your defense got things right. You almost stormed back against Alabama, and this time you just didn't have the right things happen for you in this game. So it's disappointing. It's not necessarily surprising that this happened just because of what you've seen the previous 8 weeks, but it's also, it seems like it could flip at any minute. Like Georgia could flip a switch and be the best team in the country.
Well, this is what I was going to say is if you are looking for a silver lining as a Georgia fan, which I've seen a lot of people in the comments already saying like it's not all doom and gloom, I would say that there have been 2 times in Kirby Smart's career where they have put together an abysmal performance. I mean, a gut punch, like if you feel like there's no hope after that. 2017 Auburn, and then I would also say the SEC championship game in 2021. The LSU one is also in this conversation, but I'm talking about these 2 specifically. The 2021 SEC championship game and the 2017 Auburn game, you got absolutely obliterated, but at the same time, you went on to avenge those losses, and both of those seasons, you went on to make the national championship. Not saying that that is going to align this year, but just know that Kirby Smart has proven that his teams are very capable of bouncing back in big ways after big losses.
I also would be remiss if we didn't talk about one of the biggest bureaucratical FUs we've ever seen from a state governor on our road trip this week.
Yeah.
Kirby. The state of Alabama, I just looked her up. The governor of Alabama is one Kay Ivey, Miss Ivey, okay? Kay Ivey has clearly looked at both the Georgia governor and the Mississippi governor and said, I got something for your ass. And here's what it is. When you enter the state of Alabama from the state of Georgia, you ain't never driven on roads so damn nice. Never in your life, Kirby. You go from Alabama, the last 20 miles into the state of Mississippi are pristine roadways. And then as soon as you get to Mississippi, it's like the whole time. Okay? So I was just thinking how funny it would have been just to be in those meetings where, you know, Governor Ivey, somebody comes in and is like, Governor Ivey, we've just discovered a new $1 million in the budget. What should we do with it? You know, we got a water crisis down in Mobile. We got this stuff going on. We got problems with school. I got an idea. Pave the roads nearest our state lines to make sure everybody knows the states next to us, shitty.
We have some Alabama residents in the chat. She is known as Meemaw.
Love Meemaw.
Hell yeah.
Or Mama K.
Mama K. Shout out to the roads in Alabama. That's our last analysis point for the night. We'll see you tomorrow.
Shout
Love
out to
you.
the
Bye.
veterans, man.
Shout out to the veterans.